What if I told you that just beneath the surface of our modern world, under bustling cities, dense jungles, and shifting desert sands, lay the silent remains of entire civilizations? Cities that once echoed with life, trade, and culture now rest in quiet obscurity, their stories paused in time. It's a humbling thought, isn't it, that empires rose and fell, that people loved and dreamed and built incredible things, only for their achievements to be swallowed by the earth or forgotten by history. And yet, traces remain: fragments of pottery, weathered stone carvings, the faint outlines of streets and walls, all whispering of mysteries waiting to be solved. These lost cities capture our imagination because they speak to something universal in us: the desire to uncover, to explore, and to connect with those who came before. Every crumbling ruin holds not just archaeological significance, but human stories of ambition, creativity, disaster, and resilience. There's a deep, almost magnetic pull to these places. They remind us that our own world is built upon layers of history, and that even the grandest of human achievements can fade from memory, but the fascination doesn't end with their disappearance. In many ways, that's where the real adventure begins. Today, we're setting out on a journey to rediscover 30 of these extraordinary places, cities that vanished from maps and memories, yet left behind clues that continue to intrigue historians, archaeologists, and dreamers alike. From legendary capitals swallowed by the jungle to trading hubs buried under desert dunes, each of these sites has a unique tale waiting to be told. Some were lost to natural disasters, others abandoned due to war or shifting trade routes, and a few simply faded from record until their very existence became myth. But they are all out there, silent and patient, inviting us to look closer and listen to the echoes they left behind. So join me as we step into the shadows of history and bring these magnificent lost cities back into the light. Of all the lost cities that have ever captured our collective imagination, one stands apart not for what we found, but for what we haven't. It is the ghost that haunts archaeology, the dream that fuels explorers, and the name that has become synonymous with a vanished golden age: Atlantis. Our journey begins here, not with a dusty ruin, but with a story. Around 360 B.C., the Greek philosopher Plato wrote two dialogues, the Timaeus and the Critias, in which he describes a powerful and technologically advanced island nation located beyond the Pillars of Hercules, what we now call the Strait of Gibraltar. He portrayed Atlantis as a marvel of engineering, with concentric rings of water and land, magnificent temples, and a vast, prosperous empire. But its people grew arrogant and warlike, and in a single terrible day and night of cataclysm, the entire island was swallowed by the sea and vanished forever. Plato presented Atlantis as a parable about the dangers of hubris, but he also insisted it was a true story passed down from ancient times. This single detail has ignited a search that has lasted for over 2 millennia. Theories about its real-world location are as vast and deep as the ocean itself. Some scholars argue it was a metaphor for the Minoan civilization on Santorini, which was indeed devastated by a colossal volcanic eruption around 1600 B. See, others point to the Richat structure in Mauritania, a strange geological formation that eerily matches Plato's description of concentric rings. More fanciful suggestions place it in the Caribbean, linking it to the myth of the Bermuda Triangle, or even Antarctica, speculating that shifting polar ice caps could have buried its remains. Yet for every compelling theory, there is a mountain of counter-evidence. No definitive archaeological proof has ever been brought to the surface. The very lack of physical evidence is what keeps the legend alive, transforming Atlantis from a potential historical site into the ultimate archaeological holy grail. It represents more than just a lost city. It is an idea. It embodies our deep-seated curiosity about prehistory, the possibility of forgotten advanced cultures, and the sobering reminder that even the greatest civilizations are fragile. The search for Atlantis is, in many ways, a search for ourselves, a quest to understand the past, and perhaps uncover a warning for our own future. It remains the ghost in the deep, a siren's call for dreamers and scientists alike, forever waiting just beyond the edge of the map. From the legendary depths of Atlantis, we travel now to the shores of modern-day India, where myth and history converge beneath the waves of the Arabian Sea. Here lies the story of Dwarka, the ancient kingdom of the Hindu god Lord Krishna. Unlike the purely philosophical Atlantis, Dwarka is deeply woven into one of the world's great epic poems, the Mahabharata. The texts describe it in stunning detail, a magnificent city of gold, silver, and jewels, built upon the order of Lord Krishna himself. It was said to have 72 majestic palaces and vast, well-planned courtyards, a beacon of prosperity and power. But according to the sacred stories, upon Krishna's departure from the world, the glorious Dwarka was consumed by the sea, lost in a single catastrophic event. For centuries, this was considered a beautiful allegory, a divine metaphor. That is, until marine archaeologists began to explore the waters off the coast of Gujarat. What they discovered there sent shockwaves through the historical community. Submerged in the Gulf of Cambay, they found the remains of an extensive settlement. There were stone structures, eroded pillars, and artifacts that suggested a sophisticated urban center. The most compelling evidence came in the form of stone anchors and pottery shards recovered from the seabed. When these artifacts were subjected to thermoluminescence dating, some were found to be an astonishing 9,000 years old. This time frame is revolutionary, as it predates the accepted chronology of the Indus Valley civilization, suggesting a much older and previously unknown chapter of human history in the region. The submerged city's layout is equally telling. Sonar surveys have revealed geometric formations and structures that align remarkably well with the descriptions of ancient Dwarka from the Mahabharata. The underwater ruins show evidence of a planned city with fortified areas, precisely matching the epic's account of a well-defended capital. Of course, the scientific community urges caution. Some geologists argue that the site could be the result of natural sedimentary formations, and the dating of artifacts recovered from a dynamic marine environment is notoriously complex and often contested. Yet, the cumulative evidence presents a powerful case. For many, these findings are not merely archaeological data. They are a tangible link to a story once thought to be pure legend. Dwarka stands as a profound example of how ancient narratives, long dismissed as myth, might actually be preserving the memory of real, catastrophic historical events, waiting for technology to finally uncover their truth. While the legends of sunken cities speak to civilizations lost to natural forces, our next story is one of a different kind of disappearance, one born from human desire and the dangerous power of a rumor. For over 500 years, the name El Dorado has been a siren song for explorers, a phantom that promised unimaginable wealth and drove men to ruin in its pursuit. But the origins of this legend are far more fascinating and far more human than the golden city of popular imagination. It did not begin as a place, but as a person. In the highlands of modern-day Colombia, the Muisca people practiced a breathtaking ritual to anoint a new king. The chosen chief would be taken to the sacred lake Guatavita, a deep circular lake formed in an ancient meteor crater. There, he would be stripped of his clothing and covered entirely in sticky resin before being dusted from head to toe in fine gold powder. He became a living, breathing golden man, El Dorado in Spanish. Glittering in the sun, he would then board a ceremonial raft laden with gold and emeralds, and as he reached the center of the lake, these priceless offerings would be cast into the deep waters as a sacrifice to the gods. This incredible ceremony was a profound act of spiritual devotion, but to the ears of the first Spanish conquistadors who heard fragments of the tale, it was transformed into something else entirely. They took a story about a man and twisted it into a destination, a city paved with gold, hidden deep in the impenetrable jungles of South America. Fueled by insatiable greed, waves of expeditions set out to find it. Famous figures like Gonzalo Pizarro and Sir Walter Raleigh led hundreds of men on nightmarish journeys through some of the most hostile terrain on Earth. They faced disease, starvation, and hostile indigenous tribes, all while chasing a mirage. Many never returned, their bones left to bleach in the relentless sun, a tragic testament to the destructive power of a myth. The quest for El Dorado did not end with the age of conquistadors. The dream simply evolved with the times. In the 20th century, the search shifted from the highlands of Colombia to the vast, unexplored reaches of the Amazon rainforest and the remote tabletop mountains of the Guiana Highlands, known as tepuis. These sheer, isolated plateaus, often shrouded in mist and accessible only by helicopter, have become a new focal point for the legend. Their inaccessibility and otherworldly landscapes make them the perfect setting for a lost world. Aerial surveys and satellite imagery have even identified potential man-made structures on their summits, though reaching them remains a monumental challenge. So, does a city of gold truly wait to be found? In a literal sense, probably not. Archaeologists now believe that El Dorado was always a magnificent misunderstanding, a case of cultural telephone where a sacred ritual was lost in translation. The real treasure of the Muisca was their incredible gold-working skill, much of which was indeed melted down into Spanish ingots. Yet, the persistent search has led to incredible, real-world discoveries. It pushed the boundaries of the map, opened up the continent, and in a cruel twist of irony, the modern scientific study of Lake Guatavita itself has recovered magnificent golden artifacts from its muddy depths, proof that the ritual was very real. El Dorado endures not as a lost city, but as the ultimate metaphor for our own endless yearning, a glittering reminder that the greatest treasures are often not the ones we find, but the journeys we take in their pursuit. Yet while the conquistadors scoured the jungles for a city of gold, an entirely different kind of explorer had already reached the Americas centuries earlier, not for treasure, but for timber and trade. We all know the story of Leif Erikson landing at Elant's Ox Meadows in Newfoundland around the year 1000, the first confirmed European foothold in the New World. But the Norse sagas tell of lands far beyond that initial camp, places of even greater promise with wild grapes and vast forests perfect for building. One of these places was called Hop, a name that simply means tidal lagoon. The sagas describe it as a sheltered estuary where the Norse could sail their ships far inland, a place so rich in resources they could simply lay their tools on the ground, and the land would provide everything they needed. They reportedly built temporary longhouses there, trading and at times clashing with the native Skraelings, a Norse term for the indigenous peoples they encountered. The search for Hop represents one of archaeology's most captivating cold cases. If it existed, it wouldn't just be another Viking campsite. It would be the first European settlement on the mainland of what is now the United States, predating Columbus by nearly 500 years. So why, with such a specific description, has it never been found? The challenge lies in the nature of the coast itself. The sagas point explorers south from Newfoundland, toward the Gulf of St. Lawrence and the coastline of New England. This is a vast and dramatically changing landscape. Over a millennium, sea levels have fluctuated, coastlines have eroded, and silt has filled in what were once navigable inlets. The perfect, sheltered tidal lagoon described in the texts could today be a salt marsh, a dried-up river valley, or even buried under a modern town. Furthermore, a Norse settlement like Hop would have been temporary and relatively small, perhaps only used for a season or two. Unlike the stone structures of medieval Europe, the Norse built with wood and turf, materials that decompose quickly and leave only the faintest traces in the soil. A handful of post holes or a slight discoloration in the earth might be all that remains, incredibly easy to miss without knowing exactly where to look. This hasn't stopped the search, of course. Promising sites have been investigated, like Point Rosie in Newfoundland and areas around the Miramichi River in New Brunswick. Some historians even argue that the description of wild grapes points unmistakably to New England, perhaps somewhere in Massachusetts or Rhode Island. Each potential location offers a glimmer of hope, but so far, no smoking gun, no definitive Norse artifact or structure has been found far south of Newfoundland. The enduring mystery of Hop forces us to reconsider the Norse legacy in North America. It suggests their exploration was far more extensive than we once believed, a series of brave probes down a coastline that must have seemed endless and unimaginably rich. Their failure to establish a permanent colony wasn't necessarily due to conflict or hardship, but perhaps simply because the journey from Greenland was too long, and the population back home too small to support such a distant outpost. Hop remains a ghost on the map, a place described with such clarity that it feels tantalizingly close, yet it continues to elude us, a testament to the sheer vastness of the North American continent and the fragile, fleeting footprint left by its first European visitors. Leaving behind the fog-shrouded coasts of the Norse sagas, we now turn to a story etched not in epic poems, but in sacred texts, a narrative of sin and divine punishment that has resonated for millennia. The tale of Sodom and Gomorrah, as told in the book of Genesis, describes cities so mired in wickedness that they were obliterated by fire, and brimstone rained from the heavens. For centuries, this account was treated as a powerful moral allegory. But what if a team of archaeologists, working in the sun-scorched plains of Jordan, actually found the physical evidence to support it? This brings us to the sprawling excavation site of Tal el-Hammam, a place that has ignited one of the most intense and fascinating debates in biblical archaeology. Tal el-Hammam is not a small, forgotten outpost. It is the ruins of a massive, heavily fortified Bronze Age city-state that dominated the southern Jordan Valley. Its strategic location at a key crossroads of ancient trade routes made it incredibly wealthy and powerful for its time. The city's architecture speaks of a sophisticated society, with a monumental palace complex, towering defensive walls, and gates that would have controlled the flow of goods and people for miles around. For decades, scholars have noted its prime location and speculated that it could be the site of the biblical Sodom. But it wasn't until the excavation reached a specific, deeply buried layer that the theory truly caught fire. Around 3,600 years ago, at the height of the city's power, something catastrophic happened. Archaeologists uncovered a distinct layer of destruction, but it was unlike anything caused by war or a standard earthquake. This layer held a nightmarish mixture of ash, melted mud brick, and pottery that had been vitrified turned into glass by temperatures so extreme they rival the surface of the sun. Scattered within this chaos were human bones shattered into countless fragments, as if by a force of unimaginable power. Most chillingly, the layer also contained tiny, diamond-like spheres of melted zirconium and iridium, minerals that require exceptionally high heat and pressure to form, the kind typically associated with meteorite impacts. This bizarre collection of evidence has led researchers to a startling conclusion. The city was likely destroyed by a cosmic airburst. This is an event where a comet or asteroid explodes in the atmosphere before it hits the ground, releasing a devastating shockwave of heat and pressure. The scientific data paints a horrifying picture. The initial thermal pulse would have instantly incinerated every person in the city and set the entire place ablaze. This was followed immediately by a supersonic shockwave that flattened every structure, pulverizing stone and bone alike. The force would have been thousands of times more powerful than the atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima, utterly wiping a thriving metropolis off the map in a matter of seconds. The theory posits that the memory of this incomprehensible disaster, an event that would have been witnessed and spoken of with terror for generations, became the foundation for the biblical story. The fire and brimstone, raining from the sky, perfectly describes the hail of superheated debris from the airburst, the destruction of the entire city and the surrounding area, which the Bible describes as the entire plain, aligns with the widespread devastation such an event would cause. The site itself was abandoned for centuries after the event, as the explosion likely salted the surrounding farmland with salt, making agriculture impossible, a detail that eerily echoes the biblical description of the area being turned into a barren wasteland. Of course, linking a scientific discovery directly to a religious text is fraught with controversy. Many archaeologists urge caution, arguing that while the evidence for a cosmic impact is strong, definitively naming this site as the Sodom of the Bible is a step too far. They point out that the identification relies on interpreting geographical descriptions in Genesis, which are themselves subject to debate. Yet, regardless of its biblical name, the story of Tal el-Hammam is no less astounding. It provides a credible scientific explanation for a cataclysm that wiped out a major civilization. It shows how an actual, terrifying historical event could have been woven into a foundational myth, a warning passed down through the ages. The stones of Tal el-Hammam tell a tale not just of destruction, but of remembrance, a society's attempt to make sense of a disaster so absolute it could only be explained as an act of God. But the sea holds more than just legends. It also conceals real, tangible metropolises whose rediscovery is rewriting chapters of history. Off the coast of Egypt, beneath the serene waters of the Mediterranean's Aboukir Bay, lies a discovery that stunned the archaeological world: the lost city of Tanis Heracleion. For over 1,000 years, this legendary port was considered little more than a myth, a place mentioned in ancient texts and decrees, but with no physical proof it ever existed. That all changed in the year 2000, when French underwater archaeologist Frank Gaudio and his team, after years of meticulous survey work, finally pinpointed its location. What they found on the seafloor was nothing short of miraculous: an entire city, frozen in time, preserved in a remarkable state by its blanket of sand and clay. Heracleion was not a small trading post. It was the grand, obligatory gateway to Egypt for all Greek ships, the vibrant hub that controlled all trade flowing in and out of the Nile's canopic mouth. The scale of the finds is almost overwhelming. Divers have brought to light colossal statues of pharaohs and gods, some standing over 16 feet tall, their serene features still perfectly carved despite centuries underwater. They have discovered the ruins of a massive temple dedicated to the god Amun-Jareb, its giant stone blocks toppled as if by a giant's hand. The most evocative finds are the small, personal ones: gold coins, delicate jewelry, and inscribed stone slabs known as stelae, one of which bears the famous Decree of Size, which established the tax rules for Greek traders and finally confirmed the city's true Egyptian name was Tanis, while the Greeks called it Heracleion. Yet for all the breathtaking artifacts already recovered, the most exciting prospect is what remains hidden. It is estimated that after 2 decades of work, perhaps only 3% of the total city has been excavated. The vast majority of this sprawling metropolis still lies buried under several feet of sediment on the seafloor. This presents a unique and thrilling opportunity. Modern technology like advanced sub-bottom profilers and magnetometers are now mapping what lies beneath, revealing the outlines of entire neighborhoods, more temples, and potentially even the royal palaces that ancient sources describe. Each diving season brings new, spectacular revelations, turning the site into an ongoing archaeological frontier, an underwater Pompeii that is only just beginning to share its secrets. The question of its demise is as compelling as its discovery. Geological evidence suggests a perfect storm of natural disasters led to its downfall. The city was built on a foundation of unstable clay and silt, already susceptible to subsidence. Around the 2nd century BC, a series of earthquakes likely liquefied the ground, causing buildings to collapse and slide into the water. This catastrophic event was then followed by rising sea levels, which eventually submerged the entire area, swallowing the city whole and erasing it from memory for over a millennium. The rediscovery of Tanis Heracleion is a powerful testament to the impermanence of even the greatest centers of commerce, and a thrilling promise that our maps of the ancient world are still incomplete, with countless wonders waiting to be unearthed from the depths. While the story of Tanis Heracleion reveals a city lost to the sea, our next destination lies shrouded in one of the most impenetrable jungles on Earth. For centuries, a legend persisted among conquistadors and local tribes in Honduras of a magnificent white city, hidden deep in the rainforest, a place the Spanish called La Ciudad Blanca, and indigenous stories referred to as the City of the Monkey God. It was said to be a refuge of immense wealth, where a giant simian deity was worshipped, and whose inhabitants vanished after angering the gods. Many explorers tried and failed to find it, succumbing to disease, dense vegetation, and deadly snakes, leading most historians to dismiss it as just another tantalizing jungle myth. That is, until a team of scientists decided to stop looking from the ground and instead look from the sky. Using advanced airborne lidar technology, which effectively strips away the rainforest canopy with laser pulses to map the ground beneath, researchers made a breathtaking discovery in 2012. In a remote, untouched valley within the Mosquisha region, the scans revealed the unmistakable and artificial contours of a large urban settlement. There were plazas, earthworks, mounds, and even a massive ceremonial pyramid, all laid out in a clear and sophisticated design. This was not a small village. It was evidence of a complex society that had flourished in isolation. A ground expedition confirmed the incredible find. Pushing through some of the densest jungle on the planet, archaeologists emerged into a clearing to find not just mounds, but stone sculptures of breathtaking artistry, left exactly where they had been placed centuries ago. They discovered a cache of over 500 intricately carved objects, including magnificent stone vessels and metatess, but the most stunning find was an enigmatic, jaguar effigy, a shamanic figure transforming into a spirit animal, potentially representing the feared monkey god himself. The preservation of the site, now called the Target 1 settlement, is both its greatest treasure and its most profound mystery. The team believes they have only uncovered a single, small ceremonial center, perhaps just an outpost of a much larger civilization. The lidar data suggests that the surrounding valleys are littered with the signatures of many other potential settlements, hinting at a vast, interconnected network of cities that once thrived in this region. The real White City may not be one location, but an entire lost civilization that developed independently in the Honduran rainforest for 1,000 years, completely isolated from the well-known Maya to the west. This leads to the compelling and urgent challenge that now faces archaeologists. The Mosquisher rainforest is a brutally difficult environment to work in, a place teeming with venomous fur-de-lance snakes, jaguars, and disease-carrying insects. The sheer density of the vegetation makes traditional excavation a slow, dangerous, and costly process. Furthermore, there is a pressing ethical dilemma. The very act of discovery can put a site at risk. Looters, drawn by the legend of a city of gold, are a constant threat, and simply reaching the site requires cutting trails that others could follow. For now, the Honduran government has placed the area under military protection, and archaeologists are proceeding with extreme caution, using non-invasive techniques to map the area without disturbing it. What remains hidden in those valleys could fundamentally reshape our understanding of pre-Columbian history in Central America. Who were these people? What language did they speak? Why did their civilization collapse? The answers to these questions are buried under centuries of soil and vines, waiting for the right moment to be revealed. The City of the Monkey God is a rare gift, a completely pristine time capsule from a culture untouched by the modern world. Its gradual, careful excavation promises not just golden artifacts, but something far more valuable, a lost chapter of the human story, patiently waiting for us to turn the page. The dense, green hell of the Amazon has consumed many dreamers, but few have captured the world's imagination like Colonel Percy Harrison Fawcett. A seasoned British explorer and artillery officer, Fawcett was no amateur. He had mapped remote borders for the Royal Geographical Society and had spent years traversing South America, developing a theory that would become his obsession. He called it simply Z. Drawing on a mix of old Portuguese manuscripts, indigenous tales, and his own intuition, Fawcett became convinced that hidden deep within the uncharted Brazilian rainforest lay the ruins of an ancient, sophisticated civilization, a city of immense stone structures and untold wealth, far older than any known in the Americas. He believed it was the remnant of the legendary Atlantean survivors, a cradle of culture that had seeded the entire continent. In 1925, after multiple failed attempts, Fawcett mounted his final, fateful expedition. He was certain he had narrowed down the location to a region known as the Mato Grosso. This time, he took only his 21-year-old son, Jack, and Jack's best friend, Raleigh Rimmel, believing a small, nimble party would have a better chance than a large, cumbersome one. Their last known communication was a letter dispatched from a remote outpost called Dead Horse Camp, in which Fawcett wrote with unwavering confidence that they were on the verge of a monumental discovery. Then, silence, they simply vanished into the endless green, becoming a mystery that would fuel a century of speculation. Over the following decades, more than 100 expedition members would themselves disappear or die trying to solve the riddle of what happened to Fawcett, turning his search for a lost city into one of exploration's greatest tragedies. For most of the 20th century, the scientific establishment dismissed Fawcett's City of Z as pure fantasy. The prevailing academic theory, known as the pristine myth, held that the Amazon was a green desert, incapable of supporting the large, settled populations necessary to build a complex urban civilization. It was believed that indigenous people were merely small, nomadic bands living in harmony with, but not significantly altering, their environment. Fawcett was painted as a delusional fool who led his son to a needless death, chasing a hallucination. Then, the technology that Fawcett could never have imagined began to prove him right. In the early 2000s, deforestation and the advent of satellite imagery started to reveal something astonishing. Across the Amazon basin, especially in the very region where Fawcett disappeared, researchers began to identify vast, geometric patterns etched into the Earth patterns invisible from the ground. These were not natural formations, they were enormous geometric earthworks, perfect circles, squares, and lines spanning hundreds of feet, dubbed geoglyphs. These structures number in the hundreds and suggest a previously unknown scale of human activity. Even more compelling, ground-penetrating radar and lidar surveys have recently begun to peer beneath the untouched canopy, revealing evidence of enormous, interconnected networks of roads, fortified villages, and sophisticated agricultural systems that supported populations numbering in the millions. What emerges is a picture not of a single, stone-built El Dorado, but of something potentially more revolutionary, a sprawling, low-density urban civilization that managed the rainforest with incredible ingenuity. These were not cities as we traditionally picture them, with dense downtowns and stone pyramids. Instead, they were networked garden cities, interconnected by causeways and surrounded by moats and palisades. They practiced advanced agroforestry, cultivating the soil with a rich man-made fertilizer known as terra preta, or black earth, which remains incredibly fertile centuries later. This was a civilization that shaped the very fabric of the Amazon to suit its needs, creating a managed, productive landscape on a continental scale. So, did Percy Fawcett actually find his lost city? We will likely never know his exact fate, though evidence suggests he may have been killed by a hostile local tribe. But in a profound and tragic irony, his central thesis that a major, advanced civilization once thrived in the Amazon has been vindicated. He was not a madman, but a man tragically ahead of his time. The city of Z may not have been a single place, but an entire cultural complex that has only just begun to be understood. The jungle that swallowed him has, almost a century later, begun to reluctantly give up its secrets, revealing that the greatest lost city in the Amazon was not a place of gold, but the civilization itself, a testament to human adaptation and resilience that we are only now beginning to comprehend. Now we venture into the heart of the most brutal desert on Earth, in pursuit of a kingdom known only by name. For over a century, the mention of Yam has been a ghost in the hieroglyphs, a tantalizing footnote in the story of ancient Egypt. The primary source for this enigmatic land comes from the tomb of Harkov, a governor of Aswan and a renowned explorer who served the pharaohs during the 6th dynasty, around 2250 B. See, in his autobiographical inscription, Harkov recounts 4 major expeditions he led south into Nubia. On his final journey, he boasts of a triumph that stunned the royal court. He returned with a dancing pygmy from the land of Yam, a gift so novel and entertaining it reportedly brought the young pharaoh Pepi II immense joy. But beyond this curious anecdote, the inscriptions reveal something far more significant. Yam was a powerful and independent kingdom. A major trading partner located a journey of 7 months through the desert, a place rich in incense, ebony, leopard skins, and ivory. The fundamental mystery of Yam is its location. Harkov's descriptions are both detailed and frustratingly vague. He describes traveling through a place called Urtjet and Zadu to reach Yam, which most Egyptologists believe were regions in Lower Nubia, in what is now northern Sudan. But from there, his route vanishes into the sands. He mentions that the ruler of Yam was traveling to the land of the Tijame to smite it, suggesting Yam held significant military sway over its neighbors. The journey was incredibly dangerous, requiring a caravan of 300 donkeys and a contingent of soldiers for protection. For decades, the prevailing theory placed Yam somewhere in the fertile Nile Valley further south, perhaps near the 5th or 6th cataracts. This seemed logical, as it followed the known course of the river. However, a closer reading of Harkov's texts presents a startling alternative. In one account, he states he traveled to Yam by 2 different routes, one through the Nile Valley and one through the western desert, via the oasis of Shedib. This single line radically shifts the search. It suggests that Yam was not necessarily on the Nile at all, but was instead an inland kingdom, an oasis civilization of immense wealth thriving deep within the Libyan desert, a region we now know as the Sahara. This new possibility transforms the search from a linear progression up the Nile to a needle in a haystack quest across one of the most forbidding landscapes on the planet. The modern Libyan desert is a vast ocean of sand and rock, an environment so harsh and waterless that it has been a barrier to exploration for millennia. If a powerful kingdom existed here, it would have relied on a network of now vanished water sources. This is where 21st century technology is finally beginning to illuminate a path that has been hidden for 4,000 years. Archaeologists are no longer just looking at the ground, they are looking from space. Using advanced satellite radar and multispectral imaging, scientists can now detect subtle variations in the desert surface that betray what lies beneath. These technologies can pinpoint the ghostly outlines of ancient riverbeds and lakes, known as paleochannels and paleolakes, which once cut through the now arid landscape during a wetter climatic period. They are, in effect, mapping a lost green Sahara. By superimposing these ancient water maps with known caravan routes between the oases of the Libyan desert, a fascinating corridor of possibility emerges. One theory, championed by explorers like Carlo Bergman, posits that Yam's capital might lie along one of these vanished river systems, perhaps near the Gilf Kebir Plateau in southwestern Egypt. Bergman's own expeditions on camelback have followed these theorized routes, discovering vast, previously unknown areas of prehistoric rock art and pottery sherds that indicate ancient human habitation far from any current water source. Each of these scattered artifacts is a potential breadcrumb leading back to a centralized power. The challenge is monumental. A single lost city is difficult enough to find, but an entire lost hydrological system requires a complete reimagining of the ancient world. The search for Yam is no longer just about finding ruins. It is about rediscovering a lost geography, an entire green highway that once connected the Nile to a civilization that flourished in what is now absolute emptiness. The potential discovery of Yam would be far more than just the pinpointing of an ancient city on a map. It would force a dramatic rewrite of early African history. It proves that the Sahara was not always a barrier, but was once a bridge, crisscrossed by sophisticated trading networks that connected the Mediterranean world to the heart of the continent. A powerful desert kingdom like Yam would have controlled this trade, amassing wealth and influence entirely independently of the Nile Valley powers. Its existence shatters the old, Nile-centric view of northeastern Africa and replaces it with a far more complex and interconnected picture of rival states and desert empires. The lost kingdom of Yam stands as a testament to human adaptability, a reminder that civilizations can rise in the most unexpected places, and that even the most absolute deserts hold the secrets of a greener, more populous past, waiting for the right technology to bring their stories back to life. Just when we think the map of the ancient world is complete, the deep sea reminds us how much we have yet to discover. In 2001, a team of oceanographers from the Canadian company Advanced Digital Communications was conducting a deep water survey off the western tip of Cuba, in the depths of the Yucatan Channel. They were using sophisticated side-scan sonar equipment, mapping the seafloor for a joint venture with the Cuban government. As the data streamed in, they expected to see the usual, random contours of a submerged landscape. What they found instead left them utterly stunned. At a depth of over 2,200 feet, a place where sunlight never reaches and pressure is nearly 1,000 times that at the surface, the sonar images revealed something that seemed impossible. The scans showed a series of massive, geometric formations. There were what appeared to be large, smooth stone blocks, some of them pyramid-like in shape, arranged in deliberate patterns. Most striking were the outlines of structures that looked like a vast urban complex, with wide avenues and what could be the ruins of great buildings, all spread across an area of nearly 8 square miles. The lead researcher on the project, Polina Zalitsky, a Soviet-born ocean engineer, described it as a veritable city, one that must have been submerged by a catastrophic land event thousands of years ago. The implications of such a discovery are, to put it mildly, earth-shattering. Conventional archaeology tells us that the first complex societies in the Americas, like the Olmec, began to emerge around 1500 B. See, for a city of this apparent scale and sophistication to exist, it would require a civilization that is not just older, but vastly older. To be submerged at such an incredible depth points to a timeline that defies our current understanding of human history. Sea levels have not been that low since the end of the last ice age, over 12,000 years ago. This would mean the structures, if man-made, were constructed in a period that mainstream history describes as populated only by small, nomadic bands of Paleo-Indians. Proponents of the site point to this as potential proof of a lost advanced civilization, one that could be the origin of the Atlantis legend or a precursor to all known Mesoamerican cultures. They suggest that a cataclysmic event, perhaps a massive earthquake or a rapid subsidence of the land, caused this entire section of the Cuban coast to plummet into the abyss in a single, terrible event, preserving it in the cold, dark stillness of the deep ocean. However, the scientific community has responded with intense and understandable skepticism. The primary challenge is the most obvious one, the extreme depth. Exploring a site over 2,000 feet down is not like diving on a shallow shipwreck. It requires specialized manned submersibles or remotely operated vehicles, equipment that is incredibly expensive to operate and fraught with technical difficulty. Only a handful of follow-up expeditions have been able to revisit the site, and they have provided tantalizing but inconclusive glimpses. Some footage appears to show large, cut granite blocks, some arranged in circular patterns, and even what looks like inscriptions on stone. But the alternative explanation, put forth by many geologists, is that we are seeing a remarkable but entirely natural geological formation. The area is part of a highly faulted and fractured limestone block. Geologists argue that the structures could be the result of jointing and fracturing in the bedrock, which can create incredibly straight lines and right angles that mimic human construction. The pyramids could be the product of a phenomenon called pillow lava, where volcanic rock cools into blocky, angular shapes. In essence, they argue that we are being fooled by pareidolia, the human tendency to see familiar patterns, like faces in clouds or cities on the seafloor, in random natural formations. This leaves us at a fascinating and frustrating impasse. The site off the coast of Cuba represents perhaps the ultimate deep-sea archaeological mystery. To prove it is man-made, researchers would need to recover an unambiguous artifact, a tool, a statue, a piece of pottery with clear human craftsmanship from that crushing depth. The technology to conduct a thorough, systematic excavation at such pressures is still in its infancy and is prohibitively costly. For now, the sunken city of Cuba remains a collection of haunting, blurry sonar images and a few minutes of murky video. It is a profound question mark on the edge of our knowledge, a reminder that the most dramatic chapters of human history may not be buried under sand or jungle, but locked away in the silent, crushing vault of the deep sea, waiting for the day our technology and our courage can finally reveal the truth. While the Cuban deep-sea mystery challenges the very timeline of civilization, another legend draws us to the heart of a vast, sun-scorched desert with a tale not of submersion, but of disappearance under the sands. The story of the lost city of the Kalahari begins not in antiquity, but in the grand era of Victorian exploration, with a man who was equal parts showman and seeker. His name was Guillermo Farini, born William Leonard Hunt, a former tightrope walker and impresario who decided to become an explorer. In 1885, after a journey into the then mysterious interior of southern Africa, he returned to London with an extraordinary claim. He told the Royal Geographical Society that deep within the arid wastes of the Kalahari Desert, he and his son had stumbled upon the ruins of a massive stone city. He described massive, half-buried walls made of large, interlocking blocks without any visible mortar, structures that formed great circular formations and long, straight avenues. He even produced sketches showing these ruins stretching to the horizon, a silent, sand-choked metropolis that spoke of a once great and completely unknown civilization. Unsurprisingly, the academic establishment was deeply skeptical. Farini was, after all, an entertainer by trade, and his account had a theatrical flair. Critics argued that what he had likely seen were not man-made ruins, but the spectacular geological formations known as copies large, weathered rock outcrops that can naturally fracture into remarkably square and linear shapes. For decades, his story was dismissed as either a hoax designed to sell books or a simple case of mistaken identity, where a showman's eye saw wonder in ordinary stone. The lost city of the Kalahari was relegated to the status of a charming explorer's myth, a footnote in the history of African exploration. Yet, the story refused to die. It persisted in travelogues and local lore, a tantalizing what if that continued to beckon adventurers. The turning point came a century later, not with a lone explorer on a camel, but with technology that could see through the sand. In the 1980s and 90s, several expeditions, armed with Farini's original notes and a determination to solve the mystery, returned to the general area he described. They employed the emerging science of remote sensing. Using ground-penetrating radar and magnetometers, they began to scan the vast, dune-covered landscapes. The results were electrifying. The instruments registered massive, unnatural anomalies deep beneath the surface. They detected what appeared to be the signatures of large, rectangular structures and long, straight walls buried under meters of sand. These weren't surface rocks. They were hidden formations with right angles and linear patterns that screamed of intelligent design, lying in the exact region where Farini had claimed to make his discovery. The most compelling modern theory suggests that Farini did not see a city of standing walls, but the very tip of a vastly larger iceberg. He might have wandered across a site where wind erosion had temporarily scoured away the overlying sand, revealing just the uppermost courses of walls that extend far deeper. The real city isn't on the surface, it's beneath it, an entire buried landscape waiting for its moment. This theory connects the legend to a very real historical context, the Kingdom of Mapungubwe. We now know that southeastern Africa was home to powerful and sophisticated trading states, like Great Zimbabwe and Mapungubwe, which flourished between the 11th and 14th centuries. These civilizations built extensive stone structures and controlled trade routes that stretched to the coasts of Arabia and India. It is entirely plausible that a similar, yet undiscovered, stone-built settlement existed further west, in what is now the Kalahari, perhaps as a satellite trading post or a regional capital that collapsed as climate patterns shifted and desertification swept over its farmlands. The challenge of confirmation remains immense. The Kalahari is not a sea of rolling sand dunes like the Sahara. It is a vast semi-arid savanna covered in dense scrub and sand, making traditional surveying incredibly difficult. Excavating such a large, deep site would be a monumental and costly undertaking. Yet, the scientific desire to solve the puzzle is stronger than ever. Each new technological leap in satellite imaging, lidar, and subsurface radar brings us closer to being able to map this buried world without ever breaking ground. The lost city of the Kalahari represents a second chance, an opportunity to vindicate a misunderstood explorer, and prove that within the whispers of myth often lies a kernel of truth, patiently waiting for us to develop the tools to listen. Yet while the deserts of Africa hold their secrets close, the sands of Egypt have yielded more legendary finds than perhaps any other place on Earth. But even in a land so thoroughly explored by archaeologists, one city stands as a powerful reminder that our greatest discoveries might still be waiting, hidden in plain sight. This is the story of Tanis, a capital of pharaohs that the world largely forgot, a city that rose to incredible power only to be abandoned to the desert, its deepest treasures perhaps still lying undisturbed. For many, the name Tanis might ring a bell from a certain Hollywood franchise, where it was depicted as a lost city, buried by a biblical-scale sandstorm. While the reality is less cinematic, the truth is, in many ways, even more compelling. Tanis was very real, and it was once the glittering capital of all Egypt. During the political turmoil that followed the end of the New Kingdom, Egypt fractured. The power of the pharaohs in Thebes waned, and a new dynasty rose in the north, in the Nile Delta. These kings of the 21st and 22nd dynasties chose Tanis as their capital, For nearly 200 years, it was the administrative and religious heart of the country, a bustling metropolis that would have rivaled Thebes in its grandeur. The rulers here built on a monumental scale, erecting massive temples dedicated to the gods Ammon, Mut, and Khonsu, mirroring the great Karnak complex far to the south. They constructed lavish palaces and, most importantly, they built their tombs right in the heart of their sacred city, within the very precincts of the Great Temple, a practice that was both bold and unusual. The modern discovery of Tanis is a tale of two excavators, and their stories reveal just how much we've found, and how much we almost certainly haven't. The first major breakthrough came in the late 1930s with the tenacious French archaeologist Pierre Montet. Working against the backdrop of the looming Second World War, Montet made a discovery that should have shaken the world as much as Howard Carter's find just 2 decades prior. He uncovered the royal necropolis of Tanis, and within it, the intact tombs of several pharaohs, including Susens I, Amenemop, and Shoshank II. These were not just simple graves, they were chambers filled with breathtaking funerary treasure. Susens' sarcophagus was a masterpiece of carved silver, not gold, a metal so rare in ancient Egypt it was often considered more valuable. His mummy was adorned with a stunning gold funeral mask, exquisite jewelry, and vessels of alabaster and gold. The find was spectacular, but history intervened. The world was on the brink of war, and news of a valley full of gold in the desert was overshadowed by the looming conflict in Europe. Tanis' moment in the sun was tragically brief, and its glory was quickly relegated to a footnote in the history of archaeology. Montet's work proved that Tanis was a city of immense wealth and power, but he only scratched the surface, quite literally. He found the royal tombs, but what about the rest of the city? The urban sprawl, the homes of the nobles and commoners, the workshops, the harbors, this is where the story becomes truly thrilling. The vast majority of Tanis remains completely unexcavated, buried under centuries of silt and sand from the Nile's annual inundations. The city is not located in a remote, inaccessible desert. It lies beneath cultivated fields and the modern Egyptian town of San el-Hagar. This presents a unique challenge and an incredible opportunity. Unlike sites that have been picked over by looters for millennia, the urban heart of Tanis is likely sealed under a protective layer of earth, a perfect time capsule waiting for the right technology and the right team to uncover it. Geophysical surveys using ground-penetrating radar and electrical resistivity tomography have already revealed tantalizing hints of what lies beneath. They have mapped out the outlines of what appear to be entire neighborhoods, extensive administrative buildings, and, most excitingly, the potential locations of other major temples whose existence is only hinted at in ancient texts. The sheer scale of the buried city suggests that Montet's fabulous tombs might represent just a fraction of the wealth still hidden there. The potential for another completely intact royal tomb is exceptionally high. The later pharaohs of the dynasty would have followed the practice of their predecessors, interring themselves within the sacred precinct. Their final resting places have simply not been found yet. The significance of a full excavation of Tanis cannot be overstated. This was not a provincial backwater. It was the capital of Egypt during a fascinating and poorly understood period of its history, often dismissively called the Third Intermediate Period. Uncovering its complete layout, its archives, and its art would allow historians to rewrite the chapter on this era, moving it from a time of supposed decline to one of dynamic cultural and political change. Finding another intact tomb would be an event on par with the discovery of Tutankhamun, offering an unparalleled window into the funerary practices and material culture of the Delta Kings. Tanis challenges our perception of Egyptian archaeology. It reminds us that the next great discovery might not be in some remote, unexplored valley, but right under our feet, hidden beneath the shifting sands of a well-trodden land, a silent megalopolis holding its breath and waiting for its second dawn. But our search for legendary wealth does not end in the sweltering jungles of South America. Further south, in the windswept, glacier-carved wilds of Patagonia, a different kind of phantom city captured the imagination of European explorers. While the conquistadors looted the Inca and Aztec empires, rumors began to circulate among Spanish colonists of an even greater prize, hidden at the very edge of the known world. They called it the Ciudad de los Caesars, the City of the Caesars, and its legend was born from a potent mix of desperation, wishful thinking, and fragmentary tales from indigenous peoples. The stories described a magnificent metropolis hidden deep within the Andes, its buildings shimmering with silver and gold, its inhabitants living in immense wealth and splendor, completely isolated from the outside world. Some versions claimed it was founded by survivors of a Spanish shipwreck who had intermarried with local tribes and built a utopian society. Others said it was a lost Inca city, a refuge for those fleeing the Spanish conquest, who had taken their vast royal treasures with them. The most fantastical accounts even described the city as enchanted, appearing only to certain people at certain times before vanishing back into the mist, a true phantom of the mountains. What makes the legend of the City of the Caesars so persistent isn't just the allure of treasure, but the sheer, imposing geography of its supposed location. Patagonia is a land of extreme and brutal beauty, a place that seems designed to defy exploration. To the west, the southern Andes present a nearly impenetrable wall of jagged, snow-capped peaks, active volcanoes, and massive glaciers that creak and calve into deep, frigid lakes. To the east, the landscape gives way to arid, windswept steppes and dense, temperate rainforests known as the Valdivian jungle, a tangle of evergreen trees, bamboo thickets, and boggy ground that is incredibly difficult to traverse. This is a region of howling winds, unpredictable storms, and a profound, overwhelming sense of isolation. For centuries, this treacherous terrain was the city's greatest protector. Expeditions launched from Spanish settlements in Chile or Argentina would quickly find themselves bogged down, literally and figuratively. They faced bone-chilling cold, starvation, and the constant threat of attack from the region's fiercely independent indigenous tribes, particularly the Mapuche, who were masters of their domain and had no desire to guide outsiders to any mythical city. The history of the search for the Ciudad de los Caesars is a long and tragic catalogue of failure and obsession. From the 16th century well into the 20th, dozens of expeditions, both official and private, set out into the wilderness. Many were never heard from again, their fate swallowed by the same mountains they sought to conquer. One of the most famous was led by Jesuit priest Nicolas Mascardi in the late 1600s. Establishing a mission on the shores of Lake Nahuel-Huapi, he spent years searching for the city, convinced it was his Christian duty to find and convert its inhabitants. He ultimately disappeared, likely killed, his mission abandoned. Later, in the 19th and early 20th centuries, the legend was co-opted by a new wave of explorers and fortune hunters, their efforts often fueled by ambiguous clues or outright hoaxes. A common story involved a lone, ragged prospector stumbling into a remote town with a bag of gold nuggets and a tale of a magnificent city, only to die before he could lead anyone back to it. These stories were the lifeblood of the legend, providing just enough tantalizing evidence to encourage the next wave of seekers. So, was there ever a real city of silver and gold hidden in Patagonia? From an archaeological standpoint, almost certainly not in the literal sense the Spanish imagined. No evidence of a large, wealthy urban center built by Europeans or Incas has ever been found. However, the legend likely does have a kernel of truth rooted in the region's natural wealth and its native inhabitants. Patagonia is rich in mineral deposits, and the indigenous Tehuelche and Mapuche peoples were known to use silver and other metals for jewelry and ceremonial objects. A Spanish explorer encountering a prosperous, unfamiliar tribe adorned with silver might easily have extrapolated a single village into a vast, gleaming city in their reports, their vision clouded by greed. Furthermore, the region contains spectacular natural formations that could be easily misconstrued by a desperate, hopeful traveler. A sun setting behind a towering granite spire like Mount Fitzroy can make the entire mountain range appear to glow with a supernatural, metallic light. A cave system lined with quartz or mica could be mistaken for a silver-lined gallery. The legend persists because the landscape itself is so awe-inspiring and otherworldly that it feels like a place where anything could be hidden. The true legacy of the Ciudad de los Caesars is not a pile of treasure, but the powerful hold it has on the human spirit. It represents the eternal hope that something miraculous lies just beyond the next mountain pass, that the map still has blank spaces waiting to be filled with wonder. The quest for it, though ultimately futile, drove the exploration and mapping of one of the most remote and beautiful places on Earth. Even today, with satellite imagery having theoretically mapped every inch of the planet, the legend endures. It speaks to a modern desire for there to still be mysteries, for there to be places so wild and inaccessible that they can still hide a secret. The city of the Caesars is a phantom, but it is a phantom carved from the very rock and ice of Patagonia, a permanent feature of the landscape and a testament to our enduring need to believe that somewhere, just out of reach, a city of wonders is waiting. But sometimes the sea doesn't keep its secrets forever. Sometimes, in a moment of unimaginable tragedy, it offers a fleeting, heartbreaking glimpse. This brings us to the coast of Tamil Nadu in India, to a place where myth and history have always danced together in the spray of the breaking waves. Here stands the magnificent shore temple of Mahabalipuram, a stunning complex of rock-cut artistry that has been an UNESCO World Heritage Site for decades. Yet local legend, centuries older than any UNESCO designation, spoke of much more. It told of 7 pagodas, 7 magnificent temples that once lined the shore, so arrogant in their beauty that they enraged the gods. In a single night of divine fury, the story goes, 6 of these temples were swallowed by the sea, leaving only the one we see today to stand as a solitary reminder of what was lost. For generations, this was considered a poetic tale, a way to explain the powerful forces of nature that shaped this coastline. That is, until the day the ocean itself decided to reveal the truth. That day was December 26, 2004. As the cataclysmic Indian Ocean tsunami receded from the coast, pulling back with unimaginable force before surging forward again, it performed a temporary and devastating miracle. For a few brief minutes, the water pulled back hundreds of meters, further than anyone had ever seen. And there, on the newly exposed seabed, villagers and fishermen saw something that should not have been there. They reported seeing long, straight rows of large stone blocks, the outlines of walls, and even the distinct forms of sculpted lions and elephants, all laid bare by the retreating waves. It was a moment of horrific paradox, a natural disaster of unprecedented scale offering a tantalizing, fleeting confirmation of an ancient myth. As quickly as it was revealed, the sea rushed back in, covering the structures once more, but the seed of discovery had been planted. This accidental glimpse spurred immediate scientific interest. The Archaeological Survey of India, in collaboration with international teams, began systematic underwater explorations of the area. What they found confirmed the tsunami's shocking revelation. Sonar surveys and diving expeditions mapped a vast submerged area littered with man-made structures. They discovered the remains of a massive stone wall, nearly 200 feet long, along with a leveled rock platform that clearly served as a foundation for a large structure. Most compelling were the artifacts recovered from the seabed, stone masonry blocks that perfectly matched the architectural style of the surviving shore temple, and a complete 6-foot-tall granite lion, a classic Pallava dynasty sculptural motif. The evidence was undeniable. There wasn't just one temple. There were the remains of a sprawling, sophisticated temple complex, dating back at least to the 7th century A.D. during the reign of the Pallava kings, now resting under 15 to 25 feet of water. The question, of course, is how this happened. Geologists now have a clear and scientific answer that aligns perfectly with the local legend of a sudden cataclysm. This region of India is particularly susceptible to tectonic activity. Evidence suggests that around 1,000 years ago, a massive geological event, likely a major earthquake, caused a significant section of the coastline to subside. The land simply dropped, sinking these magnificent structures beneath the waves in a single, dramatic event. The legend of the god's wrath was the ancient population's way of explaining this terrifying and inexplicable natural disaster. The arrogance of the buildings was simply their existence in a zone of immense geological volatility. Today, the exploration of submerged Mahabalipuram is an ongoing project, and the scale of what remains hidden is what truly excites archaeologists. The areas surveyed so far are believed to be just the periphery, perhaps outer walls or smaller subsidiary shrines that surrounded a central, grander complex. The core of the lost city, the main temples themselves, likely lie further out, in deeper water, still waiting to be found. Each new survey with more advanced sonar technology reveals more anomalies, more hints of a vast underwater archaeological site. The discovery forces a complete reassessment of the Pallava dynasty's ambition and architectural prowess. Mahabalipuram was not a small artistic retreat. It was likely a massive, sprawling port city and a religious capital of immense importance, much of which now lies on the seabed. The one surviving shore temple is no longer a solitary monument. It is the gateway to a lost world, a tantalizing clue that the most incredible chapters of our history are not always found in the earth, but sometimes just beneath the surface of the water, waiting for the right moment to return to the light. But the legend of lost cities in the Amazon is not confined to the tragic story of one explorer. It is woven into the very fabric of indigenous oral history. Stories passed down for generations that speak of a magnificent civilization known as the Lost City of the Jaguar. Unlike the European obsession with gold, these native tales describe something far more profound. A sophisticated people who mastered their environment, building great settlements connected by long, straight, gleaming white roads that cut through the endless green. For centuries, these accounts were dismissed by Western academics as mere folklore, the romanticized memories of a simpler past. The prevailing scientific dogma, as we touched on earlier, insisted the Amazon was a counterfeit paradise, its poor soil incapable of supporting the large, settled populations needed for urban life. They believed any complex society would have left behind stone pyramids and grand plazas, and since none were found, the legends had to be myth. This academic certainty created a blind spot, preventing us from seeing the truth that was literally under our feet. The revolution began not with a machete, but with a laser. Light detection and ranging technology, or lidar, has completely upended our understanding of what the Amazon was and what its people achieved. Mounted on aircraft, these laser pulsars can digitally strip away the dense rainforest canopy, revealing the precise topography of the ground below. When researchers first flew these missions over parts of the Bolivian and Brazilian Amazon, the results were nothing short of earth-shattering. The forest floor, once thought to be pristine and natural, was in fact an enormous, engineered landscape. The lidar maps revealed a breathtaking array of geometric shapes hidden for centuries, perfect circles, precise squares, and long, straight causeways stretching for miles. These were not the random formations of nature. They were the unmistakable fingerprints of a vast, organized civilization. The scans showed raised platforms that once supported villages, defensive ditches and moats, intricate canal systems for water management, and those legendary, white roads, actually sophisticated causeways made of crushed white ceramic and shell, which would have gleamed in the sunlight and remained dry and passable even during the heaviest rains. The scale of this discovery is almost impossible to overstate. We are not looking at a single lost city, but at the ruins of a networked garden metropolis. Current estimates suggest that this civilization, now referred to as the Khazarab culture, flourished between 500 and 1400 AD, and may have supported a population in the millions. Their urban centers were organized in a concentric ring pattern, with central plazas and monumental platforms towering over 80 feet high, all connected by those straight causeways that reached out to smaller subsidiary settlements, creating a web of social and economic exchange across the entire region. This was a low-density urbanism, a different way of building a civilization that worked in harmony with the jungle rather than clearing it away. They practiced a form of advanced agroforestry, cultivating the land with a rich, fertile soil known as terra preta, or black earth, which they created themselves through a mysterious process of adding charcoal, bone, and manure. This man-made soil remains incredibly fertile to this day, a lasting testament to their agricultural genius. The implications of this are staggering. It means the Amazon as we know it is not a pristine wilderness, but a carefully managed garden that has been shaped by human hands for thousands of years. Many of the trees that dominate the forest today, like the valuable Brazil nut tree, were likely planted and cultivated by this ancient civilization. Their disappearance remains a mystery, though it was likely a combination of climate shift and the arrival of European diseases that swept ahead of the explorers themselves, decimating populations before any conquistador ever set foot in their cities. The lost city of the Jaguar, it turns out, was not a place of stone and gold, but of earth and wisdom. It represents a completely different model of civilization, one that thrived without destroying its environment, whose greatest monuments were not pyramids to the gods, but a thriving, sustainable relationship with the jungle itself. Its rediscovery forces a profound and humbling rethink, proving that the greatest treasure of the Amazon isn't a hoard of gold, but the lost knowledge of how to live within it. Moving from the engineered landscapes of the Amazon, we now travel back to the very dawn of empire itself, to a city whose name echoes with primordial power, yet whose stones remain lost to time. This is the search for Akkad, the capital of history's very first empire, a place that fundamentally reshaped human civilization. Around 2,334 years before the Common Era, a legendary figure named Sargon of Akkad achieved the unimaginable. Through brilliant military strategy and political genius, he unified the independent, warring city-states of Sumer powerful places like Uruk, and Lagash under his sole rule. He didn't just conquer, he created a new model of governance, a multi-ethnic, centrally administered empire that stretched from the Persian Gulf to the Mediterranean Sea. At the heart of this unprecedented domain was his magnificent capital, the city of Akkad, also known as Agade. It was described in ancient texts as a place of immense wealth and splendor, with bustling docks, towering temples, and a royal palace that was the envy of the world. For over a century, the Akkadian Empire dictated the course of history, its language becoming the lingua franca of diplomacy and trade, its administrative systems setting a template that every future empire would follow. Yet, in a cruel twist of history, the city that started it all has completely vanished. While we have countless clay tablets mentioning Akkad, boasting of its glory and detailing its economic transactions, not a single stone of the city itself has been positively identified. Its disappearance is so complete that we don't even know what the Akkadians called themselves. The name, Akkadian, is one we gave them, derived from the city we cannot find. The empire's eventual collapse was as dramatic as its rise. Cuneiform texts describe a perfect storm of calamities that brought the mighty Akkadians low. Invasions by barbarian Gutian tribes from the Zagros Mountains, widespread internal rebellion from subject peoples eager to break free, and most chillingly, a catastrophic, generations-long drought. Scientific evidence, including deep core soil samples from the region, supports this ancient climate story. Data from the Gulf of Oman reveals a sudden spike in wind-blown dust around 4,200 years ago, pointing to a period of intense aridity that would have decimated the agriculture that fed the empire's cities, leading to famine, mass migration, and social collapse. In this chaos, the great capital of Akkad was likely abandoned, and then slowly buried by the very silt of the rivers that had once given it life. The search for this singularly important site is perhaps the greatest archaeological cold case in Mesopotamia, and the challenges are immense. The first and most frustrating obstacle is the geography of Iraq itself. Akkad was said to be located on the western bank of the Euphrates River, between the modern cities of Samarra and Babylon. This sounds specific, but over 4 millennia, the rivers of Mesopotamia have not been static. They have meandered, changed course, and flooded endlessly, depositing layer upon layer of silt across the entire alluvial plain. The landscape Sargon knew is now buried under meters of earth. Furthermore, this same fertile plain has been continuously inhabited for thousands of years. The very villages and towns of today are often built directly on top of ancient tells, or settlement mounds, making excavation impossible without displacing current populations. The city of Akkad could literally be lying beneath a modern Iraqi town, its secrets protected by the simple fact of people living their daily lives above it. Another major hurdle is the nature of the city's remains. Unlike the stone pyramids of Egypt or the ziggurats of Sumer made from baked brick, Akkadian architecture might have relied more on mud brick. Mud brick is an excellent and readily available building material, but when a structure is abandoned, it doesn't ruin so much as it melts. Over centuries, it dissolves back into the earth from which it came, leaving behind subtle, often indistinguishable mounds that blend into the natural landscape. Without clear stone foundations or inscriptions found in situ, a promising tell might be excavated for years before its true identity can be confirmed. Despite these challenges, the hunt has never truly stopped. Promising leads have emerged over the years. One compelling candidate is the site of Tel Muhammad, just south of Baghdad. Excavations here have uncovered evidence of a major urban center from the correct time period, with fortifications strong enough to be a royal capital. Another strong contender is Ishin Miziad, a large, relatively unexplored mound that fits the general geographical descriptions. The most tantalizing clues, however, often come from the black market. Cuneiform tablets looted from unknown sites in Iraq sometimes surface, containing texts that mention Akkad. If archaeologists could trace these tablets back to their origin, it could finally lead them to the source. The quest for Akkad is more than an academic exercise. It is a search for our own origins. To find the capital of the First Empire would be to touch the very moment humanity learned how to organize on a colossal scale, for better and for worse. It is the elusive heart of a world we built, waiting silently beneath the dust of ages for its story to be told anew. While the legend of El Dorado was a European fantasy of a city of gold, the Inca themselves spoke of a very real place of final refuge, a bastion of their culture and wealth hidden from the relentless advance of the Spanish conquest. This is the story of Paititi, a name that resonates not with greed, but with resilience. In the years following the fall of their empire, as the last Inca emperor, Tupac Amaru, was captured and executed in the main square of Cusco. The surviving members of the royal family and their most loyal priests and warriors are said to have retreated. They fled not just from the conquistadors, but from the known world itself, vanishing into the impenetrable cloud forests and steep valleys of the eastern Andes, a region the Inca called the Antisuyo. They took with them the most sacred relics of their civilization, including the golden effigy of their creator god, Viracocha, and the priceless mummies of their ancestral kings. Their destination was a secret citadel, a place of such remote and fortified splendor that it would remain a sanctuary for the Inca spirit, forever beyond the reach of the invaders. This was Paititi, the last echo of the Sun Kingdom. The search for this final redoubt is made infinitely more complex by its proposed location. Unlike the high-altitude citadel of Machu Picchu, Paititi is believed to lie not up in the peaks, but down in the treacherous transition zones where the Andes Mountains collapse into the Amazon basin. This is a world of deep, V-shaped valleys perpetually shrouded in mist, where jagged ridges give way to dense, vine-choked rainforest. The area spanning the remote border regions of Peru, Bolivia, and Brazil is one of the most challenging and least explored terrains on the planet, a place where even modern maps still show vast blank spaces. Expeditions here face vertical ascents and descents of thousands of feet, constant rain, venomous snakes, and diseases like leishmaniasis. It is a landscape that actively defends its secrets, and it is precisely why the Inca chose it. They were masters of geography, and they selected a hideout that European technology and endurance could not overcome. For centuries, the quest for Paititi was fueled by tantalizing but vague colonial-era documents. One of the most compelling is the account of missionary Andrés Lopez, who in the late 16th century wrote of a large city rich in gold, silver, and jewels called Paititi, located deep in the jungle and ruled by a lineage of Inca lords. These reports were often dismissed as the ramblings of desperate men or the repetition of indigenous tales, meant to send treasure hunters on a fatal wild goose chase. The turning point in the modern search came not from a document, but from a groundbreaking archaeological discovery that changed everything we thought we knew about the Inca. In the 1980s, a team led by the Italian explorer and archaeologist Mario Polarillo began investigating a massive, previously unknown complex of stone ruins known as Memoria. This discovery proved that the Inca had indeed built significant, sophisticated settlements far to the east of their known empire, deep in the Amazonian foothills. It was the first solid evidence that the legends of a retreat into the Antisuyo had a basis in fact. This breakthrough opened the floodgates for a new wave of exploration, now armed with technology the conquistadors could never have dreamed of. The most powerful tool in the modern search is lidar, the laser mapping technology that can see through the dense forest canopy. In recent years, lidar surveys flown over the Peruvian departments of Cusco and Madre de Dios have revealed a stunning and previously invisible network of Inca infrastructure. The scans show not just isolated ruins, but entire systems of paved roads, agricultural terraces, and plazas, all hidden beneath the green blanket of the jungle. Most excitingly, they have revealed long, straight Inca trails that do not lead to any known site. They simply stop, pointing like arrows into the most remote and unexplored valleys. These are not trails for trade, they are trails for escape, and they represent the most promising leads in the search for the final refuge. One such trail, investigated by the French explorer Thierry Jamin, led his team to a massive, natural pyramidal formation known as the Pyramids of Paratori. For decades, these symmetrical, terrace shapes seen on satellite imagery were dismissed as unusual sandstone formations. Jamin's ground expeditions, however, found evidence of stone structures and Incan pottery at the base, suggesting this site was at least used, if not built, by the retreating Inca. Other expeditions, like those led by the American Gregory de Mengian, have spent decades pushing into the Cordillera de Pocartambo, documenting dozens of new Incan sites, including the complex at Calanga, further proving the empire's extensive presence in the region. Each of these discoveries is a piece of a vast puzzle, slowly sketching the outline of a final, grand settlement that served as the terminus for these roads. The ultimate prize would be finding Paititi itself, and the evidence is building that we are getting closer. In 2021, a Peruvian research team announced a breathtaking lidar discovery in the jungle of the Huayna mountain range. The scans revealed a sprawling potential archaeological site covering over 40 square kilometers, featuring what appear to be canals, reservoirs, and platforms arranged in a distinct, geometric urban plan. The site is located in an area that perfectly matches the descriptions from historical chronicles, and is situated along one of those mysterious, terminating Inca roads. Ground verification is the next, crucial step, a daunting task given the extreme remoteness. The search for Paititi is no longer a hunt for a mythic city of gold. It is a rigorous archaeological investigation into the final chapter of Inca resistance. Finding it would not just be about recovering treasure, but about recovering a lost history, a testament to a culture's desperate and successful struggle to preserve its soul in the face of annihilation. The citadel remains out there, a silent sentinel in the green mist, holding the last secrets of the children of the sun. But the desire to vanish from sight is not unique to the jungle. Sometimes, the safest place to be is nowhere on the surface at all. In the heart of Turkey's otherworldly region of Cappadocia, where wind and water have sculpted soft volcanic rock into a landscape of towering fairy chimneys and deep valleys, there lies a hidden world. Most people have heard of Derinkuyu, the astonishing underground city that could shelter 20,000 people, with its stables, churches, and ventilation shafts plunging hundreds of feet into the earth. Yet Derinkuyu is not a singular marvel. It is merely the most famous example of what archaeologists are now realizing was an entire subterranean civilization. The real story is not the one city we can tour, but the dozens, perhaps even hundreds, of sister cities that are believed to remain hidden, waiting to be fully discovered. This isn't just a network of caves, it's evidence of a society that chose to build its world in reverse, carving not up toward the sky, but down into the dark, cool safety of the earth. The driving force behind this massive undertaking was a primal need for survival. From the 8th to the 12th centuries, Cappadocia found itself on the front line of some of history's most brutal conflicts. First came the Arab raids during the Byzantine Empire, then later the Mongol invasions. For the local population, which included many early Christians, the surface was a killing field. Their solution was one of breathtaking ingenuity and collective effort. They went underground, and they did so on a scale that is almost impossible to comprehend. These were not simple hideouts. They were complete, multi-level metropolises designed for long-term habitation. They featured intricate ventilation systems that provided fresh air to the deepest levels, massive rolling stone doors that could seal off entire sections from invaders, wells that tapped into underground water sources, and networks of communication tunnels that connected different districts. They had wineries, oil presses, chapels, and even cemeteries. Every facet of surface life was replicated in this sunless world. For centuries, the full extent of this underground realm was pure speculation, hinted at by local legends and the discovery of mysterious, blocked-off tunnels. That all changed with the advent of advanced geophysical technology. In recent years, teams using ground-penetrating radar and electrical resistivity tomography have begun to scan the Cappadocian landscape, and the results are staggering. The data doesn't just show a few extra caves. It reveals a Swiss cheese-like substrate riddled with massive, unnatural voids and perfectly straight tunnel systems that extend for miles in every direction. These scans have identified what appear to be entire undiscovered cities, some potentially larger than Derinkuyu itself, lying just tens of meters beneath modern towns and farmland. One such survey in the area around Nevşehir pointed to a colossal subterranean complex that could have supported a population of nearly 40,000 people, a discovery that would make it the largest underground city in the world. The challenge now shifts from detection to excavation. Many of these potential sites lie directly beneath modern communities, making large-scale archaeological digs a complex proposition. Other entrances are sealed, either by ancient inhabitants for security or by centuries of erosion and landslides. Each new opening is a delicate operation, as archaeologists must carefully clear debris while ensuring the structural stability of the fragile volcanic rock. What keeps them going is the promise of what these pristine, sealed time capsules might contain. While Derinkuyu was used and reused over centuries, many of these sister cities were likely sealed in a moment of crisis and never reopened. They could hold the untouched belongings of the people who fled there, from perfectly preserved textiles and tools to libraries of early Christian texts, offering an unparalleled window into a community that lived its life in the shadows. The lost cities of Cappadocia represent a different kind of mystery, not a civilization that fell to ruin, but one that intentionally erased itself from the surface, choosing to wait out the storm in the silent, dark embrace of the earth, and in doing so, preserved its story for 1,000 years. Yet as we chart the depths for cities of legend, sometimes the most profound discoveries are those that rest not in myth, but in the quiet, sunken reality of a world we never knew existed. Just off the southern coast of Greece, in the shimmering cerulean waters of the Laconia region, lies a site that shatters our perception of ancient maritime society. This is Pavloptri, a name that may not carry the epic weight of Atlantis, but whose silent, underwater streets offer something far more valuable: truth. Discovered in 1967 by the oceanographer Nicholas Fleming, this is not a city partially claimed by the sea. It is a metropolis entirely submerged, a complete urban plan preserved in a watery time capsule. What makes Pavloptri utterly unique is its staggering age. While most known sunken cities, like Tanis Heracleion, date to the classical or Hellenistic periods, Pavloptri is a Bronze Age relic. Extensive dating of pottery fragments and building techniques has confirmed this city was thriving a full 5,000 years ago, making it the oldest known submerged city in the world. A bustling port town centuries before the rise of the Minoan palaces on Crete, and a millennium before the Mycenaeans built their mighty citadels. Walking its streets, or rather, swimming them, is an experience that redefines ancient history. The layout is astonishingly clear from above. The serene water acts as a protective lens, revealing a ghostly grid of a pre-classical world. You can trace the outlines of a complex network of streets and alleyways, the foundations of dozens of buildings, courtyards, and even 37 identifiable tombs. Most remarkably, archaeologists have mapped 2 large megalithic structures that likely served as central administrative buildings or palaces, and a clear, organized system of water management. But the true marvel is what remains unseen. The vast majority of this city, perhaps over 95% of it, is not lying openly on the seabed. It is buried. The same soft sediments that gently covered the site over millennia have acted as a perfect preservative, sealing away the organic material that almost always decays on land. This is where the potential for revolution lies. We are not just talking about more pottery or stone tools. We are talking about the possibility of finding intact wooden furniture, woven baskets, papyrus documents, and even food remains. These fragile artifacts could provide an unparalleled, high-resolution snapshot of daily life in the third millennium before the Common Era, offering insights into diet, trade, social structure, and technology that we can only guess at from other, drier sites. The implications for understanding early Mediterranean civilization are profound. Pavlopteri was a sophisticated trading hub, strategically positioned to connect the Greek mainland with the Aegean Islands and beyond. Its existence in such a developed state, so early on, forces historians to completely reconsider the timeline of complex maritime trade networks. This was not a primitive village. It was a planned town with a clear social order and the architectural sophistication to manage a thriving mercantile economy. The discovery of stone-lined graves within the city limits suggests a society that intimately connected its daily life with its spiritual beliefs, a practice that would later be uncommon in Greek urban planning. Who these people were remains one of the site's greatest mysteries. They predate the cultures we traditionally study, meaning they could represent a previously unknown or poorly understood precursor society, a vital missing link in the chain that led to the glories of classical Greece. The answers are all there, locked in the sediment, waiting for the careful touch of an archaeologist's trowel. The challenge and the thrilling promise is that excavating Pavlopteri is a painstakingly slow and expensive process. Underwater archaeology is a discipline of immense patience, where a single square meter can take an entire diving season to excavate properly. The team, led by Dr. John Henderson from the University of Nottingham, has made incredible strides, creating a precise digital map of the entire site using cutting-edge sonar and 3D modeling technology. But the physical excavation has only just begun to scratch the surface of the buried city. Each new dive has the potential to yield a find that could rewrite a paragraph in our history books. A single preserved wooden tablet with script could illuminate a lost language. A warehouse filled with imported goods could map a trade route we never knew existed. Pavlopteri is not a mystery of if it exists, but of what it contains. It is a guaranteed discovery, a promise of knowledge lying just beneath the sand, a silent sentinel from the dawn of European civilization that holds its secrets close, waiting for us to finally listen. Yet for all the grandeur of Angkor Wat, this iconic temple was merely the gleaming spiritual heart of something far larger and more complex. The true scale of the Khmer Empire's ambition lay not in its most famous monument, but in the vast, vanished urban sprawl that once surrounded it, a lost capital of waterways, roads, and dwellings that has been swallowed by the relentless Cambodian jungle. Recent technological breakthroughs are now pulling back this green curtain, revealing that the world's largest religious complex was actually the centerpiece of an enormous low-density metropolis, a sophisticated network of cities, temples, and infrastructure that formed the backbone of one of history's most powerful empires. This revelation transforms Angkor from a singular wonder into a single neighborhood in a ghostly megalopolis, waiting to be fully rediscovered. The Khmer Empire, which dominated much of Southeast Asia from the 9th to the 15th centuries, was a master of water and stone. Its rulers were not just god-kings, they were urban planners on a staggering scale. Inscriptions and bas-reliefs hinted at other major centers beyond Angkor, with names like Mahendraparvata and Heracleion spoken of as former capitals. For centuries, these places were little more than names, their locations guessed at but never confirmed, their structures assumed to be reclaimed by the forest. The challenge of finding them was immense. The jungle in this region is not merely dense, it is a monolithic force, a tangled web of roots and vines that can shatter stone and conceal entire pyramids of laterite and sandstone. Traditional ground surveys were hopelessly inadequate, able to cover only tiny, painstakingly cleared areas, leaving the broader picture a frustrating mystery. Everything changed with the arrival of airborne lidar. When archaeologists first flew these laser mapping systems over the forests around Angkor, the results were nothing short of revolutionary. The technology effectively digitally deforested hundreds of square miles, and what appeared on the screens beneath was the ghostly imprint of a colossal urban landscape. The scans revealed a sprawling grid of canals, reservoirs, and elevated roads that stretched far beyond the known boundaries of Anchor. They showed the distinct outlines of hundreds of previously unknown temples, hidden shrines, and what appear to be the foundations of extensive residential districts, all arranged in a sophisticated and deliberate pattern. This was not a haphazard collection of villages. It was the meticulously engineered footprint of a massive, dispersed city, an ancient marvel of urban planning that rivaled any contemporary city in the world at its peak. The most stunning lidar discovery, however, was made further north, on the mist-shrouded slopes of the Phnom Kulen Plateau. Here, the lasers unveiled the clear and precise outlines of a city that had been lost for over 1,000 years, Mahendraparvata, the very first capital of the Khmer Empire, founded by its illustrious king, Jayavarman II. The scans showed a full urban grid, complete with a network of roads, canals, and the foundations of dozens of temples, all arranged in a symbolic pattern meant to represent the sacred Hindu universe on Earth. This was the birthplace of the Khmer Imperial Project, a city that was abandoned as the empire's center of gravity shifted to the plains of Anchor, and was subsequently consumed by the jungle so completely that even its exact location was forgotten. The potential of these lost urban networks is breathtaking. While the stone temples have endured, the everyday life of the Khmer people, their homes, markets, and administrative buildings was constructed of organic materials like wood and thatch, which decayed centuries ago. The faint traces these structures left behind are now visible only to lasers. Uncovering them promises to rewrite our understanding of how this empire functioned, detailing the lives of the millions of people who supported the god-kings in their stone palaces. Furthermore, the greatest treasures awaiting discovery may not be gold or jewels, but knowledge. The Khmer were prolific record keepers, inscribing their history on stone stelae, and more tantalizingly, on perishable materials like palm leaves and animal skins. The humidity of the jungle is a notorious destroyer of such organic artifacts, but the possibility remains that within a sealed chamber of a newly discovered temple, or preserved in the unique conditions of a buried foundation, a library of these records could survive. Finding such a trove would be like discovering the original archives of the Roman Empire, offering a direct, unfiltered voice from the past to tell us their story in their own words. The work of physically reclaiming these cities from the jungle has only just begun. Each site identified by lidar now requires generations of painstaking ground verification and excavation. Archaeologists must carefully clear vegetation, map each structure, and slowly piece together the story of these urban centers, why they were built, how they were used, and ultimately, why they were abandoned. The prevailing theory for the empire's collapse points to a devastating combination of factors: extended drought followed by catastrophic flooding that broke the intricate water management system, coupled with shifting trade routes and relentless military pressure from neighboring kingdoms. The cities didn't vanish in a day. They were gradually relinquished to the forest, their sophisticated infrastructure failing and their populations dispersing. This makes the lost capitals of the Khmer more than just archaeological sites. They are a profound cautionary tale. They stand as a testament to the fragility of even the most advanced civilizations in the face of environmental and political upheaval. The rediscovery of Mahendraparvata and the sprawling urban network of Greater Anchor is a humbling reminder that nature is the ultimate custodian of history, and that our greatest monuments are only ever on loan from the earth. These cities hidden beneath the canopy are not ruins. They are a challenge, an invitation to look deeper and understand the true price of glory and the resilience of the human spirit. Now we journey from the submerged ports and jungle temples to the endless, empty quarters of the Arabian desert, in search of a city whose legend is woven into the very fabric of Islamic tradition. For over 1,000 years, storytellers and scholars have spoken of Ubar, a name that echoes with both immense wealth and divine punishment. The Quran itself references a place called Iram of the Pillars, a city of towering architecture and arrogant people who, after rejecting the warnings of the Prophet Hud, were swept away by a savage, sand-choking wind, erased from the world as if they had never existed. For centuries, this was understood as a powerful moral lesson, but a handful of intrepid explorers, including the famous British adventurer Bertram Thomas in the early 1930s, began to hear a different version of the story from the Bedouin tribes who navigated the Rub al-Khali, the empty quarter. These nomadic people spoke of a lost city called Ubar, a magnificent fortress of great wealth that had vanished into the sands, and they wove its fate together with the ancient Quranic tale of Iram, creating a single, powerful legend of a paradise lost to hubris. The search for this phantom metropolis seemed like the ultimate fool's errand. The Rub al-Khali is one of the most hostile and inaccessible environments on the planet, a vast ocean of sand dunes larger than France, where temperatures soar to lethal heights and shifting sands can bury a landmark in a single season. For decades, explorers could do little more than collect fragments of stories, unable to pinpoint a location in a landscape that offered no fixed points. The breakthrough, when it finally came, arrived not from a camel caravan, but from the cold void of space. In the 1980s, a team led by filmmaker and amateur archaeologist Nicholas Clapp partnered with a jet propulsion laboratory scientist named Dr. Ron Blum. Together, they had a radical idea: to use America's eyes in the sky to look for the ghost of a road. Their logic was brilliant. Ubar was described in all the legends as a critical trading hub for frankincense, the valuable aromatic resin that was worth its weight in gold in the ancient world. Camel caravans laden with this treasure would have needed to converge on the city from all directions. Even if the city itself was buried, the paths to it, hardened by thousands of years of foot and hoof traffic, might still leave a trace. They began analyzing data from the Space Shuttle Challenger's radar missions, which could penetrate the dry desert sand to map the topography beneath. They combined this with older, declassified satellite images from the Corona program. Slowly, painstakingly, they began to trace faint, ancient tracks across the desert that all seemed to lead to a single, promising point: a remote waterhole near the modern Amani town of Shisar. The satellite images showed what looked like the remnants of a large, octagonal wall surrounding a central point. It was the only anomaly of its kind in a vast, featureless expanse. In 1992, Clapp's team, now joined by renowned archaeologist Dr. Juris Zarins, mounted an expedition to the site. What they found there would make headlines around the world. They uncovered the ruins of a massive limestone fortress with 8 tall towers and walls 10 feet thick. Inside, they found evidence of a sophisticated settlement, rooms, courtyards, and, most tellingly, artifacts directly linked to the frankincense trade. But the most dramatic discovery was the fortress's fate. The entire central portion of the structure had collapsed, not from erosion or attack, but into a massive subterranean cavern, a sinkhole. It appeared the very ground upon which Ubar was built had literally opened up and swallowed it whole. A cataclysm that perfectly mirrored the legend of a city, punished by the earth itself. The announcement was met with both excitement and intense scholarly debate. Skeptics argued that the Shisar site, while significant, was too small to be the legendary Ubar of the tales. They proposed it was more likely a crucial fortified outpost, a final watering stop and defensive stronghold on the edge of the empty quarter that guarded the approaches to the real Ubar, which they believe still lies buried deeper in the desert. The fortress's collapse into a sinkhole, they suggest, was a localized disaster that over centuries became conflated with the larger, mythological destruction of an entire metropolis. Proponents counter that in the world of archaeology, we often find the tangible root of a magnificent legend, and Shisar fits that description perfectly. The discovery of the fortress, precisely where the ancient caravan routes converged, proves there was a real, prosperous city in the exact location where legend said Ubar should be, and it met a sudden, catastrophic end that would have been remembered and mythologized for generations. The true significance of the find may lie in this very debate. Whether Shisar is the legendary Ubar itself or merely its gateway, its discovery is a landmark achievement in modern archaeology. It stands as one of the first major lost cities to be found primarily through the use of satellite technology, proving that the future of discovery often lies in looking down from the heavens to find what has been hidden on Earth. The story of Ubar is a powerful fusion of ancient scripture, Bedouin oral history, and cutting-edge science, a reminder that even in our age of information, the deserts of our world still hold profound secrets, and that the stories we tell about the past often contain a startling grain of truth, waiting for the right moment to be unearthed. Yet the story of the Norse in North America does not end at that single, windswept camp in Newfoundland. The same Viking sagas that describe Leif Erikson's discovery of a land he called Vinland, after the wild grapes that grew there, also tell of larger, more ambitious settlements established in the years that followed. The Greenlanders' saga and the saga of Erik, the Red speak of expeditions led by Thorvald Eriksson, Leif's brother, and the wealthy merchant Thorfinn Karlsefni, who arrived with a fleet of ships carrying livestock, families, and the clear intention to stay. They describe building sturdy longhouses within protected harbors, engaging in tense trade and violent clashes with the native Skraelings, and exploring a coastline of seemingly endless resources. These accounts point not to a temporary hunting camp, but to a concerted effort to plant a permanent foothold in a new world, a Norse frontier that, for a brief moment, stretched beyond the edge of all known maps. The existence of these larger communities has long been the holy grail of North American archaeology, a discovery that would fundamentally shift our understanding of transatlantic contact and prove the Norse venture was far more than a fleeting, exploratory raid. The search for these lost Viking settlements has largely shifted south from Newfoundland, guided by the saga's own geographical clues. The descriptions of milder climates, longer growing seasons, and most famously, the presence of wild grapes logically point toward the richer, more hospitable lands of the Canadian Maritimes, specifically the coasts of New Brunswick and Nova Scotia. Here, the Gulf of St. Lawrence offers the kind of sheltered inlets and abundant resources that would have been ideal for a Norse settlement. One particularly promising area is the Miramichi River region in New Brunswick, a location that aligns with saga descriptions of a territory explored by Thorvald Eriksson. Another compelling candidate is the Point Rosy Peninsula in southwestern Newfoundland, where satellite imagery initially revealed unusual soil discolorations suggestive of buried, man-made structures. While excavations at Point Rosy have so far yielded ambiguous results, the very fact it was investigated highlights the modern, technologically driven approach to this ancient mystery. Archaeologists are no longer just scanning the coastline with the naked eye. They are employing advanced tools like ground-penetrating radar and scientific soil analysis to detect the faintest traces of a presence that lasted barely a generation. The greatest challenge in finding these sites lies in the nature of the Norse presence itself. Unlike the stone castles of medieval Europe or the massive earthworks of pre-Columbian cultures, a Viking settlement in Vinland would have been relatively small and built almost entirely from organic materials. Their longhouses, while large, were constructed of timber and turf, materials that decay and leave behind only subtle stains in the earth, a pattern of post holes and hearths that can be easily missed or erased by centuries of subsequent activity. Furthermore, the Norse occupation was incredibly brief, likely lasting no more than 20 or 30 years. This short duration means the archaeological footprint would be exceptionally light, a thin layer of culture buried under centuries of forest growth and soil development. A Norse artifact in North America is the ultimate needle in a haystack, a single silver coin or a piece of iron slag in a continent of stone tools and wilderness. Despite these hurdles, the tantalizing possibility continues to drive the search forward, fueled by occasional, enigmatic discoveries. The most famous is the Norse penny and whetstone found at the Native American site of Goddard in Maine, evidence that Norse objects were traded far down the coast. While this doesn't prove a settlement, it demonstrates that their reach was extensive. More recently, the discovery of butternuts at Atlantis Ox Meadows was a revelation. Butternuts do not grow in Newfoundland. Their nearest source is the St. Lawrence Valley, proving the Norse at Atlantis Ox Meadows were exploring far to the south, exactly as the sagas describe. Each of these small finds is a piece of a larger puzzle, suggesting that Atlantis Ox Meadows was not the entirety of Vinland, but rather a gateway camp, a staging ground for forays into a world the Norse called Vinland the Good. The true prize, a full-scale settlement with multiple longhouses, workshops, and evidence of families, remains hidden, holding the potential to rewrite not just a chapter of history, but our entire perception of the pre-Columbian Americas as an isolated world. But our journey into the unknown doesn't end with the high-tech mapping of the Amazon or the deserts of Arabia. Sometimes, the most enduring mysteries are born not from ancient texts, but from the yellowed pages of a modern newspaper. In the stark, sun-baked beauty of the American Southwest lies a natural wonder so vast it defies comprehension: the Grand Canyon. We think of it as a place fully explored, mapped by park rangers and traversed by millions of tourists. Yet its true scale is almost unimaginable. This is not a single ditch in the ground, it is a labyrinthine world of its own, stretching for over 270 miles, with thousands of side canyons, cavern systems, and tunnels, the vast majority of which have never been properly surveyed, let alone entered by a human being. It is within this context of sheer, overwhelming secrecy that one of America's most controversial archaeological tales takes root. The story broke on the front page of the Arizona Gazette on March 12, 1909. Under a sensational headline, the article detailed the incredible claim of one G.E. Kincaid, a self-described explorer and prospector working under the sponsorship of the Smithsonian Institution. Kincaid reported that while traveling down the Colorado River, he had discovered a massive cavern entrance high up on a cliff face, accessible only by rope. Upon entering, he found himself not in a simple cave, but in a man-made network of tunnels and chambers that stretched back for miles into the canyon wall. What he described was nothing short of astounding. The central chamber was a massive, cross-shaped hole filled with metal statues of unknown gods, wielding what appeared to be clubs and knives. Smaller chambers branched off, filled with intricate copper artifacts, advanced metallurgical vessels, and strange, hieroglyphic-like markings covering the walls. Most shockingly, he claimed to have found a crypt housing dozens of mummified bodies, smaller in stature than any known Native American tribe, and laid to rest in a manner that, to his eyes, seemed distinctly Egyptian. The article sent shockwaves through the public, suggesting a radical rewriting of North American history. Could an advanced, transoceanic civilization have established a colony in the heart of Arizona in prehistoric times? The official response was swift and absolute. The Smithsonian Institution issued a firm denial, stating they had no knowledge of any such expedition, had never employed a G.E. Kincaid, and possessed no artifacts from the Grand Canyon. With no follow-up articles and no physical evidence, the story was quickly dismissed by academics as an elaborate hoax, a classic piece of yellow journalism designed to sell newspapers in a slow news cycle. Skeptics have since picked apart the story, noting its reliance on a single, uncorroborated source, its melodramatic tone, and the fact that Kincaid himself never came forward again. The tale was relegated to the fringes of history, a favorite among conspiracy theorists, but ignored by mainstream science. However, dismissing the story entirely might be a case of throwing the baby out with the bathwater. While the specific details of Egyptian mummies and a massive, accessible cave city are almost certainly fictionalized or exaggerated, the underlying premise, that the Grand Canyon could hide significant, undiscovered archaeological sites, is not just plausible, it is a near certainty. The logistical challenge of exploring the canyon is monumental. Its sheer walls, extreme temperatures, and treacherous terrain make it one of the most difficult environments on Earth for archaeological survey. There are an estimated 1,000 caves within the canyon, and only a fraction have ever been entered by modern researchers. Many are located in virtually inaccessible spots, requiring technical climbing skills and weeks of expedition planning just to reach the entrance. Furthermore, we know for a fact that the canyon was home to ancient peoples. The remains of the ancestral Pueblones, including their stunning cliff dwellings and granaries, are well documented in places like Mesa Verde, and within the canyon itself at sites like the Tusayan ruin. These cultures were master climbers and builders, capable of creating sophisticated structures in impossibly high places. The idea that a significant settlement, or a cache of artifacts, could remain hidden in a remote grotto is not far-fetched at all. In 2016, researchers using lidar technology discovered a previously unknown, massive cave in British Columbia that had been used by indigenous peoples for millennia. Similar discoveries are made regularly in the remote jungles of Central America. The Grand Canyon, for all its tourists, possesses similar potential for secrecy. The real legacy of the 1909 newspaper story is not its wild claims of Egyptians, but the powerful question it forces us to ask. In an age where we presume to have mapped every corner of the globe, the Grand Canyon stands as a humbling reminder of how much we still don't know. It is a wilderness that defies easy exploration, a place of deep shadows and hidden passages that could easily guard secrets for centuries more. The story endures because it taps into a universal truth, that the greatest wonders are not always those we can see from the lookout point, but those that remain just out of sight, waiting in the silent, sun-baked caves for an explorer with the right combination of skill, luck, and courage to finally find them. But the sea holds more than just legendary cities like Atlantis or Tanis Heracleion. Sometimes, it claims a place we know was spectacularly real, preserving its decadence in a watery museum. Just off the coast of modern Naples lies the sunken city of Baiae, the most infamous pleasure resort of the ancient Roman world. Imagine a Las Vegas by the Mediterranean, a place where the empire's elite went to escape the pressures of power and indulge in every imaginable vice. This was not a city for governance or trade. It was a dedicated playground for the super-rich and powerful. Poets wrote of its breathtaking beauty and scandalous affairs, and emperors like Nero, Caligula, and Hadrian all built lavish villas here, seeking relaxation and often corruption in its warm springs and luxurious surroundings. Baiae was a byword for hedonism, a place so associated with debauchery that the moralizing philosopher Seneca famously condemned it, writing that to go there was to risk one's virtue. This glittering symbol of Roman excess met a fittingly dramatic end, though not from moral outrage. The same volcanic forces that created the region's therapeutic hot springs were also its undoing. The city was built directly atop the Campi Flegrae, or the Phlegrean Fields, a vast and restless supervolcano. Beginning around the 3rd century, the land began to sink in a gradual process called bradysism, where the Earth's surface slowly shifts due to hydrothermal and volcanic activity. Over centuries, this subsidence, combined with rising sea levels, allowed the waters of the bay to creep in, swallowing the magnificent marbled porticos, opulent villas, and grand bath complexes until the heart of the city was entirely submerged. Unlike a city destroyed by a sudden earthquake or eruption, Baiae sank slowly, its buildings eventually settling on the seabed in a remarkable state of preservation, where they have remained for nearly 2 millennia. Today, visiting the archaeological park allows you to snorkel or dive directly over these incredible ruins, an experience unlike any other in the world. You can swim through the skeletal remains of a grand villa, its mosaic floors still visible, and glide over the intricate patterns of a bath complex where senators once relaxed. Statues that once adorned manicured gardens now stand silently among seagrass, their marble forms providing a substrate for marine life. This underwater park is a breathtaking sight, but it represents only the tantalizing tip of the iceberg. The structures we can see are just those that were not fully buried. The vast majority of Baiae, perhaps as much as 80 or 90%, does not lie openly on the seafloor. It remains sealed beneath a thick, protective layer of sand and sediment, a perfectly preserved time capsule of Roman luxury. This is where the true potential for discovery lies, and why Baiae is considered one of the most promising underwater sites in the world. The sediment that buried the city acted as an anaerobic seal, protecting organic materials that would have vanished on land. This opens up the possibility of finding intact wooden furniture, delicate textiles, papyrus scrolls from private libraries, and even food remains in storerooms, offering an unparalleled, intimate window into the daily lives of the Roman 1%. We could learn not just how they built, but how they lived, what they ate, what they read, and how they entertained themselves in absolute privacy. The potential for discovering a completely intact villa, its rooms still arranged as they were on the day the water finally poured in, is incredibly high. Finding such a place would be the archaeological equivalent of opening a pristine Tutankhamun's tomb. but from a much later and historically vivid era. The challenge and the thrilling new frontier is exploring this buried city without disturbing it. Traditional excavation underwater is slow, expensive, and can be destructive. But new technologies are changing the game. Archaeologists are now using advanced sub-bottom profilers, which are like ultrasound machines for the seafloor. These devices send sound waves through the sediment, mapping the outlines of buried walls and structures in 3 dimensions without ever moving a single grain of sand. They are also employing sophisticated magnetometers to detect metal artifacts and changes in the soil that indicate human activity. These non-invasive surveys are creating the world's first detailed map of the sunken metropolis, revealing a sprawling urban plan of streets, neighborhoods, and monumental buildings that no one has laid eyes on since antiquity. Each survey reveals new anomalies, hinting at untouched bathhouses, sprawling villa complexes, and even potential commercial districts that served the decadent clientele. Systematically excavating even a fraction of this buried wonder will take generations, but the promise is immense. Bay offers a unique opportunity to study Roman elite life frozen in a moment of time, unaffected by the later sacking and rebuilding that altered so many ancient cities. It was a place of unparalleled wealth and influence, where the most powerful people in the ancient world came to unwind, and its secrets, preserved in the cool, dark embrace of the sediment, are waiting to tell their story. The sunken city is not a ruin, it is a library, its books written in stone and clay, just waiting for us to learn how to read them. Now we travel to the mist-shrouded highlands of West Java, Indonesia, where a seemingly ordinary hill covered in ancient stone terraces holds a secret that could shatter our understanding of human history. This is Gunung Padang, a name that means Mountain of Enlightenment, and it stands as one of the most enigmatic and fiercely debated archaeological sites on Earth. To the casual observer, it appears to be a terraced megalithic complex, a series of stone steps and arrangements built on a natural volcanic hill, similar to other sites across Southeast Asia. Mainstream archaeology initially dated the visible structures to around 2,500 years ago, attributing them to a local Neolithic culture. But a growing number of researchers, led by geologist Dr. Danny Hillman Nadawajaja, propose a far more radical and breathtaking theory. They argue that what we see on the surface is merely the tip of an iceberg, the final layer of a massive, pyramidal structure that was intentionally built in profound antiquity, its deepest foundations potentially reaching back over 20,000 years into the last ice age. The controversy hinges on what lies beneath the surface. Starting in 2011, a multidisciplinary team began a comprehensive investigation of the site using ground-penetrating radar, electrical resistivity tomography, and seismic tomography. These technologies are like giving the Earth a CT scan, revealing differences in density and structure deep below the ground. The results were nothing short of astonishing. The data suggested that the hill was not a natural geological formation, but showed clear signs of being extensively modified by human hands. The scans revealed what appeared to be large, hidden chambers and cavities at various depths. Most compellingly, core drilling samples extracted from depths of up to 30 meters brought up material that defied simple explanation. The drill cores contained not just soil and rock, but what appeared to be layered arrangements of crafted andesite and basalt stone, embedded in a matrix of a man-made adhesive, a type of ancient cement. Carbon dating of organic material found within this cement matrix produced dates that escalated dramatically with depth, while the upper layers dated to a few thousand years old. Samples from 50 meters down were dated to around 7,500 years ago. Material from even deeper, at 25 to 30 meters, yielded carbon dates that were simply staggering, ranging from 20,000 to an almost incomprehensible 27,000 years before the present. If these findings are accurate, they are revolutionary. A sophisticated, massive pyramidal structure built 20,000 years ago would predate the invention of agriculture and the earliest known permanent settlements like Göbekli Tepe by a staggering 10,000 years. It would mean that a complex, organized society capable of monumental architecture existed during the peak of the last glacial maximum, a time when mainstream science tells us humans were nomadic hunter-gatherers. struggling to survive in a harsh world. Proponents of the ancient pyramid theory argue that Gunung Padang represents the remains of a lost advanced civilization, a precursor culture whose achievements were wiped from memory by a cataclysm, perhaps the rapid sea level rise that occurred at the end of the Ice Age. They see it as tangible proof of the kind of forgotten history spoken of in myths like Atlantis. Unsurprisingly, these claims have been met with intense skepticism and harsh criticism from the broader archaeological community. Detractors argue that the team has misinterpreted natural geological formations for artificial ones. The hill is composed of an andesitic volcanic rock that naturally fractures into sharp, angular blocks that can easily be mistaken for worked stone. Geologists who oppose the theory state that the layers identified as man-made are actually the result of natural weathering and hydrothermal processes that occur commonly in volcanic rock formations. They contend that the carbon-dated material does not date the construction of the structure itself, but merely provides the age of organic matter that seeped into the cracks and cavities of a natural hill over thousands of years. The Indonesian authorities have been cautious. While the site is protected, the official narrative remains deeply divided, caught between a potentially paradigm-shattering discovery and the rigorous, conservative standards of conventional archaeology. The debate over Gunung Padang is about more than just carbon dates and radar scans. It is a fundamental clash of paradigms. It forces us to ask how we define evidence and who gets to interpret it. It challenges the established timeline of human progress and begs the question of whether we have been too quick to dismiss the possibility of great antiquity in our own story. Whether Gunung Padang is ultimately proven to be a natural wonder shaped by human hands in more recent times, or the oldest monument on Earth, its mystery has already achieved something vital. It has ignited a global conversation about the depths of our past and reminded us that some hills are not just piles of rock, but questions written in stone, waiting for us to find the right tools to read them. When we think of the Minoans, our minds immediately travel to the sprawling, labyrinthine palace of Knossos on Crete, with its vivid frescoes and the haunting legend of the Minotaur. It is the poster child for this sophisticated Bronze Age civilization, a marvel that has understandably captivated the world for over a century. But what if this magnificent complex was not the entirety of the Minoan world, but merely the most famous survivor of a far more extensive and powerful maritime empire? The tantalizing possibility exists that Knossos was just one glittering jewel in a crown that held many others, with the true heart of Minoan power potentially lost to one of the most violent volcanic cataclysms in human history. This brings us to the colossal eruption of Thura, modern-day Santorini, which occurred around the year 1600 B.C. This was not a simple volcanic burp. It was a world-ending event for the Minoans. Geologists now believe it was perhaps the single most explosive volcanic eruption in the last 10,000 years, orders of magnitude more powerful than the famous destruction of Pompeii. The eruption unleashed a multi-stage nightmare, a towering column of ash and pumice that blotted out the sun, a devastating pyroclastic flow of superheated gas and rock that raced across the sea, and finally, a tsunami wave estimated to be over 100 feet high that would have slammed into the northern coast of Crete, scouring away every port, every ship, and every coastal settlement in its path. The ashfall would have buried entire regions, poisoned the soil, and caused a volcanic winter that crippled agriculture for years. While Knossos, located further inland, managed to survive this apocalypse, albeit in a greatly weakened state, the same cannot be said for other Minoan centers that were undoubtedly closer to the epicenter. The island of Thura itself was utterly obliterated. What remains today is a dramatic caldera, a water-filled crater surrounded by the crescent-shaped fragments of the original island. Before the explosion, Thura was likely a large, circular island with a central volcano, and archaeologists are virtually certain it hosted a significant Minoan settlement, a sister city to those on Crete. This Thuran city would have been a thriving port, a crucial link in the Minoan trade network that stretched across the Aegean. Its entire existence was vaporized in the eruption, its remains now buried under hundreds of feet of volcanic rock and ash on the present-day islands of Santorini. The search for this lost capital, often called Akrotiri after the modern village near the excavation site, has already yielded one spectacular find. Since the 1960s, archaeologists have been carefully uncovering a magnificently preserved Minoan town on Thura. Frozen in time by the volcanic ash much like its later Roman counterpart, Pompeii. Here, they have found multi-story buildings with exquisite frescoes, sophisticated drainage systems, and a wealth of artifacts that reveal a people of immense artistic and technological sophistication. Yet, crucially, this discovered town of Akrotiri is believed to be a secondary settlement, a prosperous town but not the island's primary capital. No grand palace complex, like the one at Knossos, has been found there. This leads to a compelling and haunting question. If this well-preserved town is merely a suburb, where is the main city? The logical conclusion is that the true heart of Minoan Thura, the island's administrative and religious capital, was located directly under the volcano's cone, precisely where the caldera now opens to the sea. This would mean the most important structures, the largest palaces, and the greatest concentration of people and treasure were utterly annihilated, either blown into the stratosphere or now lying at the bottom of the Aegean Sea. This is where underwater archaeology takes up the hunt. Marine surveys around the Santorini caldera have begun to map the seabed, revealing startling anomalies. Sonar and sub-bottom profilers have detected what appear to be the ghostly outlines of man-made structures on the steep underwater slopes of the caldera and on the seafloor itself. These are not natural rock formations. Their geometric shapes suggest walls, foundations, and even potential harbor works now submerged under nearly 1,000 feet of water. Furthermore, around the coast of Crete itself, divers have discovered Minoan structures lying offshore, evidence that entire chunks of coastline have sunk due to the immense tectonic forces unleashed by the eruption. Each of these sunken ruins is a potential piece of a lost city, a satellite community, or a major urban center that was claimed by the earthquakes that accompanied Thura's fury. The implications of finding a fully submerged Minoan capital are profound. Such a discovery would be the underwater equivalent of uncovering a second Knossos, but one preserved in a watery time capsule, untouched by later civilizations or the rebuilding efforts that followed on Crete. The organic materials that have long since decayed on land, wooden beams, furniture, textiles, food remains, and perhaps even written records on wooden tablets, or more of the still undeciphered linear, a script, could be miraculously preserved in the low-oxygen environment of the deep sea. This would offer an infinitely clearer and more complete picture of Minoan daily life, trade, religion, and governance than we could ever glean from ruins on land. It would allow us to move beyond the singular narrative of Knossos and understand the Minoans as a truly maritime empire, whose fate was inextricably tied to the sea they mastered and the volcano that ultimately broke them. The lost capital of the Minoans remains the great silent prize of Aegean archaeology, a city of legends waiting in the abyss, holding the secrets to a civilization that shaped the ancient world before disappearing beneath the waves and ash. Yet while the ruins of Great Zimbabwe stand as an undeniable testament to African architectural genius, crowned by its iconic conical tower and massive elliptical walls, this stone city may not have been a solitary marvel, but the glittering capital of a much wider, and still hidden, civilization. For generations, the prevailing academic view held it as a unique phenomenon, a powerful but isolated kingdom that rose to control the gold and ivory trade between the 12th and 15th centuries. However, this perspective is being radically overturned, not by a single discovery in the dirt, but by a view from hundreds of miles above the Earth. The advent of satellite archaeology and widespread lidar surveying is now revealing that the landscape of southern Africa is etched with secrets invisible from the ground, suggesting Great Zimbabwe was merely the most famous node in a vast and sophisticated urban network. Across the region, particularly in Zimbabwe and Mozambique, analysts poring over high-resolution imagery have begun to identify a proliferation of mysterious geometric patterns. These are not the faint traces of small villages, but the distinct, organized outlines of what appear to be large stone foundations, arranged in circular and linear formations that mirror the architectural style of Great Zimbabwe itself. They appear in remote, inaccessible areas, on hilltops, nestled in secluded valleys, and hidden beneath dense foliage, sites that traditional foot surveys had simply never reached. The sheer number of these potential settlements is what is so revolutionary. It suggests a level of population density and political organization that was previously unimaginable for this period in southern African history. We might be looking at the scattered pieces of a forgotten empire, a cultural complex that managed territory, trade, and resources across an expanse that would have required sophisticated administration and communication. The true scale of this potential discovery hinges on a profound cultural shift in how we understand urbanism itself. Archaeologists are increasingly moving away from the traditional model of a single, dense, monumental city, and embracing the concept of low-density urbanism. This is a system where a population is distributed across a wide area in a network of smaller residential clusters, all connected by roads, trade, and a shared cultural identity, and all answering to a central, powerful capital. This model fits the emerging evidence from southern Africa perfectly. Great Zimbabwe, with its grand walls and clear hierarchy, was the undisputed religious and political core. The newly identified sites could represent everything from fortified outposts guarding trade routes to specialized craft centers for metalworking or pottery, and even elite rural estates for the nobility. They would have been connected not by paved Roman roads, but by well-established paths that facilitated the movement of goods, people, and ideas across the entire region. This theory transforms our understanding of the Kingdom of Zimbabwe from a powerful city-state into a territorial empire, a hegemon that exerted its influence over a vast landscape. The economic engine of this empire was its control of the lucrative Indian Ocean trade. Gold from the inland mines, ivory from the great herds of the interior, and other precious commodities would have been funneled through this network towards coastal ports like Sofala in modern-day Mozambique. In return, luxury goods like Chinese celadon pottery, Persian glassware, and Indian beads flowed back inland, their fragments now found in the soil of Great Zimbabwe, proving its global connections. This thriving economy would have provided the wealth and the labor force necessary to construct not just one great city, but dozens of stone settlements across the realm. However, confirming this grand theory is fraught with immense challenges. The political and economic situation in Zimbabwe has made large-scale, systematic archaeological exploration difficult for decades. Furthermore, the very nature of these sites makes them elusive. Unlike the stone pyramids of Egypt, many of the structures built by the successors and contemporaries of Great Zimbabwe used a method called dry stone walling, where stones are carefully stacked without any mortar. When abandoned, these walls don't so much collapse as they gradually slump and are reclaimed by the soil and vegetation, leaving behind subtle, circular mounds that are easily mistaken for natural rock formations. Without excavation, it is nearly impossible to confirm their human origin from the surface alone. This is where modern technology becomes our greatest ally. Ground-penetrating radar can peer into these mounds to detect the telltale signature of buried stonework. Drone photography with multispectral cameras can highlight subtle variations in soil and plant growth that betray the presence of buried ruins. Each potential site that is confirmed adds another dot to the map, slowly connecting them into the outlines of a lost kingdom. The quest is no longer just to find another great Zimbabwe, but to understand the web that connected it to its world. The silent, geometric patterns seen from space are a whisper from the past, hinting at a chapter of African history far more complex and interconnected than we ever dreamed. A story of empire written not in texts, but in stone and earth, waiting for its full narrative to be uncovered. Yet while we often imagine lost cities succumbing to a slow, creeping rise of the sea, some of the most profound vanishings in human history may have been anything but gradual. They might have been witnessed in a single, terrifying lifetime. This brings us to one of archaeology's most compelling and contentious theories, the Great Black Sea Deluge. Around 5,600 years before the Common Era, a body of water that was then a much smaller, landlocked freshwater lake underwent a transformation of biblical proportions. The prevailing theory, championed by marine geologists William Ryan and Walter Pittman, posits that as the last ice age waned, melting glaciers caused global sea levels to rise. This rising Mediterranean eventually breached the natural berm that was the Bosporus Strait, unleashing a cataclysmic torrent. They estimate that for over 300 days, a waterfall 200 times more powerful than Niagara Falls crashed into the Black Sea basin, inundating the coastal plains at a rate of a mile per day. The shoreline would have retreated visibly by the hour, swallowing an area the size of Florida in less than a year. For the Neolithic farming communities living along those fertile shores, this event would have been an incomprehensible apocalypse. Their entire world, their villages, their fields, and their sacred places would have vanished beneath a rising wall of salt water. This theory provides a stunning scientific parallel to the flood myths found in countless ancient cultures, from the story of Noah's Ark in the Hebrew Bible to the earlier epic of Gilgamesh from Mesopotamia. It suggests these universal tales of a great deluge might not be mere allegory, but a distant, collective memory of a very real and traumatic event that scattered survivors across Europe and Asia, carrying the story with them. The Black Sea, in this light, becomes more than a body of water. It is a prehistoric crime scene, holding evidence of a lost world that was drowned in a geological heartbeat. What makes this sunken landscape arguably the most exciting archaeological frontier on the planet is not just the scale of the flooding, but the unique chemistry of the water that fills it. Below a depth of about 150 meters, the Black Sea is anoxic, completely devoid of oxygen. This is because the salty, dense water from the Mediterranean inflow sinks and becomes trapped beneath a lighter layer of freshwater from river inputs, with no mixing between the two. For underwater archaeology, this is nothing short of miraculous. Oxygen is the primary culprit in the decay of organic materials. Wood, rope, leather, and even human flesh, which would normally rot away to nothing in a few centuries, can survive perfectly preserved for thousands of years in this cold, dark, oxygen-free environment. This means that if Neolithic villages were submerged by the flood, we are not just looking for scattered stone tools and post holes. We could potentially find intact wooden houses with their woven grass roofs still attached, clay pots still sitting on hearths, fishing nets, wooden tools, and perhaps even the outlines of field boundaries and wooden fences, a complete snapshot of a 7,000-year-old community, frozen in time at the moment it was abandoned to the deep. The hunt for these lost settlements has already begun, yielding finds that are both tantalizing and enigmatic. In 2016, a team surveying the seafloor off the coast of Bulgaria using advanced sonar and remote-operated vehicles discovered something extraordinary at a depth of over 2,000 meters. The remains of a structure that appeared to be a man-made wall, surrounding what looked like a settlement. While some geologists argue the formation could be natural, the straight lines and right angles strongly suggest human agency. Even more compellingly, subsequent expeditions have identified potential structures at shallower depths along the ancient prehistoric shoreline, or paleo shoreline, which was mapped by Ryan and Pittman. These include strange, rectangular mounds and linear features that look nothing like the surrounding geology. Each one of these anomalies is a potential lost village, a time capsule waiting to be opened. The challenge of exploration is immense. The anoxic layer is a blessing for preservation, but a curse for human divers. It is a toxic environment where even the most advanced equipment cannot function for long. This makes excavation a task almost entirely for remotely operated vehicles. Sophisticated robots equipped with lights, cameras, and delicate manipulator arms. The process is slow, expensive, and requires immense patience. Yet, the potential reward is arguably greater than any sunken treasure of gold or jewels. To find a preserved Neolithic settlement in the Black Sea would be to open a window onto a period that marks the very transition from hunter-gatherer societies to settled farming life, the Neolithic Revolution. We could learn what they cultivated, how they built their homes, how they organized their society, and what they believed, all from the objects they left behind in their sudden flight. It would allow us to move from theorizing about the flood to walking, virtually, through its sunken streets. The silent, dark depths of the Black Sea are no longer just a graveyard. They are a library, and we are only just beginning to learn how to read its oldest, most incredible volumes. Yet for every legend of a city consumed by the sea or swallowed by the jungle, There is the story of a civilization that did not merely survive a harsh environment, but mastered it, bending an entire desert to its will. In the heart of the Sahara, in what is now the Fezzan region of Libya, such a people thrived against all odds. They were the Garamantes, and for over 1,500 years, they ruled a kingdom of astonishing sophistication in one of the most unforgiving landscapes on Earth. Greek and Roman historians, like Herodotus and Tacitus, dismissed them as primitive nomadic raiders, uncivilized barbarians on the fringes of the empire. For 2,000 years, that dismissive label stuck, but we now know the truth, revealed not by ancient texts, but by the unblinking eye of satellite technology. The Garamantes were not simple nomads. They were urbanites, engineers, and agricultural innovators who built a verdant paradise in the middle of a sea of sand, only to have their entire civilization vanish beneath the dunes, leaving behind a mystery as vast as the desert itself. The foundation of their success was a technological marvel that turned the desert green, the Fagara. These were not simple wells, but vast underground irrigation systems, complex networks of tunnels that tapped into ancient fossil water trapped deep beneath the Sahara. The Garamantes would dig a mother shaft down to the water table, sometimes over 100 feet deep. From there, they would dig a gently sloping tunnel backward for miles, allowing the precious water to flow by gravity to the surface, where it could be channeled to feed their fields of wheat, barley, dates, and grapes. The scale of this undertaking is almost impossible to overstate. Maintaining these tunnels was a constant, dangerous battle against cave-ins and siltation, requiring a highly organized society and specialized knowledge passed down through generations. This was desert hydrology on an industrial scale, a testament to a civilization that understood its environment intimately and possessed the collective will to reshape it completely. With this endless supply of water, the Garamantes did not just survive, they built. Their capital, Garama, was a bustling metropolis of mud brick and stone, featuring multi-story buildings, public squares, and sophisticated fortifications. But Garama was just the beginning. For centuries, archaeologists believed it was more or less alone, a singular oasis of civilization. That perception has been utterly shattered in the last 2 decades by the revolution of satellite archaeology. By analyzing high-resolution imagery from space, researchers like Professor David Mattingly have made a discovery that rewrites the map of ancient Africa. They have identified the traces of hundreds, perhaps even thousands, of other Garamantian settlements scattered across thousands of square miles of the Libyan desert. The landscape is literally carpeted with their remains. From orbit, you can see the ghostly outlines of fortified villages, known as Caesars, their crumbling walls still tracing defensive perimeters around central courtyards. There are the faint circular foundations of stone homes, the grids of ancient field systems, and, most remarkably, the entry shafts and spoil heaps of countless Fagara systems, looking like strings of beads laid across the desert floor. This revelation is breathtaking in its implications. We are not looking at a single kingdom with a capital and a few outposts. We are looking at a vast, interconnected network of urban centers, farming communities, and trading posts, a lost Saharan civilization that may have supported a population in the hundreds of thousands at its peak around 2,000 years ago. They were the central hub of trans-Saharan trade long before the camel caravans of the medieval period, dealing in luxuries like ivory, gold, and salt brought from sub-Saharan Africa, and exchanging them with the Roman world for glass, olive oil, and wine. The Garamantian Empire was a sophisticated, literate society with its own writing system and a complex social structure, a powerful force that interacted with Rome not as a subject, but often as a rival power. And yet, for all we have learned from space, we know almost nothing. The overwhelming majority of these identified sites, over 99% of them, have never been visited by an archaeologist, let alone excavated. They lie in remote, inaccessible regions, their secrets protected by political instability and the sheer, deadly logistics of mounting an expedition into the deep desert. Each one of these untouched settlements is a perfect time capsule. The hyper-arid conditions of the Sahara are a phenomenal preservative. Within those buried rooms, we could find intact wooden tools, woven textiles, food remains, and perhaps most importantly, archives written on wooden tablets or pottery shards in the Garamantes' own script, which remains largely undeciphered. A single, well-excavated caesar could provide an entire chapter on daily life, social organization, and economic practices. The ultimate mystery of the Garamantes is not how they lived, but why they fell. The prevailing theory points to a slow-motion environmental crisis they themselves may have inadvertently caused. Their incredible Figara systems relied on fossil water, a resource that is not replenished by rainfall. It is essentially a finite battery, and after centuries of extraction, the Garamantes may have simply drained it. As the water table dropped, their tunnels ran dry, their fields withered, and their desert kingdom began to contract. A changing climate towards greater aridity would have accelerated this decline. Their sophisticated world, built on a foundation of water, gradually returned to the sand from which it came, their cities abandoned and forgotten until technology caught up with their legacy. The lost cities of the Garamantes stand as a powerful and poignant lesson in sustainability, a reminder that even the most advanced civilizations are tethered to the resources they depend on, and that the desert never truly gives up what it takes back. We stand today on the shores of a civilization we think we know, looking back at the cradle of urbanization in the Fertile Crescent of Mesopotamia, where the Sumerians built the world's first cities like Ur and Uruk around 4,500 years before the Common Era. But what if that story, as foundational as it seems, is actually a sequel? What if the true origin of urban life lies not on the land we can see, but beneath the waves of a nearby sea, hidden in the silent, submerged depths of the Persian Gulf? This is not the search for a single lost city, but for an entire lost world, a potential heartland for human civilization that vanished as the world warmed. During the peak of the last ice age, some 21,000 years ago, global sea levels were nearly 400 feet lower than they are today. In this ancient world, the Persian Gulf was not a gulf at all. It was a vast, fertile, low-lying basin, a verdant extension of the Tigris and Euphrates river system known as the Gulf Oasis. Fed by the ancient courses of these mighty rivers, as well as by the Karun River from Iran and groundwater springs, this exposed land would have been an enormous oasis, a lush deltaic plain of marshes, grasslands, and estuaries, teeming with game and rich in resources. For thousands of years, as much of the planet was locked in ice, this sheltered, well-watered refuge would have been one of the most habitable places on Earth for early human populations. The theory, most robustly proposed by archaeologist Jeffrey Rose, suggests this land was not just a temporary hunting ground, but a stable refuge for thousands of years, a place where groups of hunter-gatherers could have thrived and, crucially, gradually settled down. The established archaeological record shows a puzzling gap in human settlement around the edges of the Gulf between approximately 75,000 and 8,000 years ago. The Gulf Oasis theory provides an elegant solution. Those people weren't missing. They were living out in the now flooded basin. As the climate shifted and the glaciers of the last ice age began to melt, the sea levels started their relentless rise. The inundation of the Persian Gulf was not a slow, gentle process. It was a rapid and relentless encroachment, with the sea reclaiming the basin at a rate of about 100 meters per year over the course of 4,000 years. This would have been a catastrophe unfolding in slow motion across countless generations. Communities would have seen their ancestral hunting grounds, their freshwater springs, and their sacred sites gradually swallowed by the salt water. They would have been forced to constantly retreat, their world shrinking century by century. This mass displacement, a wholesale migration of peoples carrying their knowledge, culture, and social structures, would have funneled these populations into the river valleys of Mesopotamia and beyond. This influx of people, already possessing a deep understanding of their environment and perhaps even proto-agricultural practices, could have been the catalyst that sparked the sudden and seemingly miraculous emergence of Sumerian civilization. In this light, the Sumerian creation myth, the Enuma Elish, which describes the world being created from a union of fresh and salt water, reads less like abstract cosmology and more like a distant, cultural memory of their very real origins in that lost, fertile estuary where the rivers met the rising sea. The potential reward for finding evidence of this lost world, is nothing less than a complete rewrite of the early chapters of human history. Confirming the existence of sophisticated settlements on the Gulf floor would push back the timeline of human urbanization by thousands of years, suggesting that the process of settling down and forming complex societies began not in the river valleys we know, but in a paradise now lost to the ocean. The challenge, however, is as deep as the water itself. The search area is enormous, covering over 200,000 square kilometers of seabed. The sediments at the bottom of the Gulf are incredibly thick, laid down over millennia by the very rivers that once sustained the oasis, meaning any ruins are likely buried under dozens of meters of silt and sand. Furthermore, the modern Gulf is one of the most politically and economically sensitive waterways on the planet, crisscrossed by shipping lanes and oil pipelines, making large-scale archaeological survey a complex diplomatic and logistical undertaking. Yet the hunt is quietly beginning. Marine archaeologists are employing the same tools that found other sunken cities: multi-beam sonar to map the seafloor topography in high resolution, sub-bottom profilers to peer into the layers of sediment beneath, and magnetometers to detect anomalies that could indicate buried hearths, bricks, or tools. They are also looking at the few islands in the Gulf, like Bahrain and Failaka, which would have been the high hills of this lost world, as potential places where the fleeing inhabitants might have made their last stand, leaving behind clues to their origins. They search for the faintest of traces, a curiously geometric arrangement of stones captured on a sonar readout, a core sample that brings up not just shell fragments but a worked piece of obsidian, or a dredged-up artifact that clearly belongs to a period long before the sea arrived. The lost cities of the Persian Gulf represent the ultimate cold case, a civilization that may have had its dawn and its zenith entirely underwater, its entire story waiting to be unearthed from the abyss, promising to tell us not just where we came from, but how we first began to build the world we know. And so our journey across continents and through millennia comes to a close, but the story of these lost cities is far from over. We've ventured from the sunken ports of the Mediterranean to the vine-choked temples of the Amazon, from the sand-buried metropolises of the Sahara to the legendary capitals swallowed by the sea. Each of these 30 sites represents so much more than a mere archaeological puzzle. They are entire chapters of the human story, narratives of ambition, innovation, disaster, and resilience that were prematurely closed and left to gather dust in the attic of history. The crumbling stones of Tanis, the geometric earthworks of the Amazon, and the silent courtyards of the Garamantes are not just ruins. They are questions waiting for an answer, invitations to reconnect with the dreams and struggles of our ancestors. They remind us that our current understanding of the past is not a finished book, but a manuscript with countless missing pages, each lost city a blank space yearning to be filled. What makes this moment in history uniquely thrilling is that we are no longer limited to shovels and guesswork. We stand on the precipice of a new golden age of discovery, armed with technologies that would seem like pure magic to the explorers of the past. Airborne lidar lasers are digitally stripping away dense jungle canopies to reveal entire urban grids hidden for centuries. Advanced sub-bottom profilers and marine magnetometers are mapping forgotten city plans on the seafloor without ever moving a grain of sand. Satellite imagery is uncovering buried riverbeds and ancient footpaths in the world's most inhospitable deserts, while genetic analysis of soil samples can now detect the presence of long-vanished human activity. Each technological leap doesn't just bring us closer to finding a specific city. It fundamentally transforms our ability to see the ancient world as a connected, vibrant whole, revealing networks of trade, migration, and culture that we never knew existed. The true impact of these discoveries goes far beyond pinning a new name on an old map. Every time one of these lost cities is brought back into the light, it has the potential to shatter long-held assumptions and rewrite the narratives we tell ourselves about human progress. The stunning complexity of the Amazonian garden cities forces us to abandon the myth of a pristine wilderness and recognize the profound role humans played in shaping even the most seemingly untouched environments. The submerged ruins of the Persian Gulf oasis could radically alter our understanding of where and how urbanization began. Each find is a humbling reminder that history is not a linear path from primitive to advanced, but a complex tapestry of experiments, successes, and failures, most of which we are only just beginning to appreciate. The next dive, the next satellite pass, the next ground-penetrating radar scan could reveal the one piece of evidence that turns our entire understanding of a civilization on its head. This endless pursuit of knowledge is a testament to an irrepressible human curiosity, a drive to understand where we came from, and in doing so, learn more about who we are today. These lost cities captivate us because they are the ultimate mystery, blending historical fact with the romance of the unknown. They represent the possibility that greatness can be forgotten, that entire worlds can vanish, and that secrets of immense importance might still be lying in wait, patient and silent, for the right moment to be revealed. The map of our past is being redrawn in real time, and we are all witnesses to this incredible era of exploration. Now we'd love to hear from you. Which of these lost cities fires your imagination the most? Is it the legendary wealth of Paititi, the advanced engineering of the Garamantes, or the sunken mysteries of the Black Sea? Share your thoughts and your own favorite historical mysteries in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this journey through time, be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss our next